This podcast of the Equine Forum is brought to you by the University of Louisville Equine Industry Program at the College of Business. It all begins in 15 seconds right after this word from our podcast sponsor.
The University of Louisville Equine Industry Program at the College of Business is now offering a graduate certificate, which can be completed in 15 or 30 weeks and be done as a standalone or used as 20% of your MBA. Classes at both the undergraduate and graduate level are forming now.
This is HRRN, horse racing's voice.
As they arrive at the 316th pole, here's Red Knight, Zulu Alpha on the outside, and Arklow down toward the rail. The three of them are right together as they come into the final furlong. Arklow, Red Knight, Zulu Alpha, third is Arklow. Arklow's got it close to home from Red Knight. Arklow and Florent Giroux have won. Some like it hot brown on the inside, a Tone right up alongside. The two of them are stride for stride, a Tone and some like it hot brown. Field pass is third. Up the rail, Mr. Dumas trying to make a late run. It is still some like it hot brown. A Tone and Mr. Dumas. Some like it hot brown. All the way in the WinStar Mint Million.
Welcome to the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires.
And the Spirit and Glory trying to come down the outside. Still many chances at the furlong pole. Here's Spirit and Glory right down the crown of the track. Lady Pooty tries to battle on with Sparkle Blue, but it's Spirit and Glory and Irad Ortiz going clear to win the Virginia Oaks here by a length and a half. English B right to his outside. Here's Jace's Solitude on the outside. Tracksmith trying to find room. It's English B who leads it. Down the outside is Jace's Solitude. English B, Jace's Solitude. These two hit the wire together. I think English B held on.
Now, here's Mike Penna.
Good morning once again, everyone. Mike Penna, Baron of the Backstretch, saying welcome to the show that launched a network. It is the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires, right here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. Happy to have you with me right up until 11 a.m. Eastern on Sirius 162, XM 207, our affiliates in Lexington, Louisville, and across the country, and streaming worldwide and podcast on our website, horseracingradio.net, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Well, it's week 2 of the college football season and opening weekend of the NFL season, which means we are just 2 days away from hearing the words, "Are you ready for some football?" And that's going to occur on Monday night with the first Monday night football game of the season. So I'm going to start this show by asking you, are you ready for some turf racing? I know it doesn't have the same ring, but boy, is it a legitimate and an appropriate question on this first Saturday in September. Kentucky Downs is hosting 10 stakes races this weekend. Get this, 6 today, all graded, including the Grade 1 Franklin Simpson Stakes and 2 Breeders' Cup Win in Your In races. Those stakes are going to be followed by 4 more on tomorrow's card. And the lowest purse of any of the 10 stakes is $1 million. How about that? Tell me the racing isn't unbelievable at Kentucky Downs. How about Colonial Downs? Colonial Downs has carded 12 races later today, 6 stakes races, all of those on grass, including the Virginia Oaks and the Grade 3 Virginia Derby. So asking the question, are you ready for some turf racing to tie into opening weekend of the NFL season and Monday Night Football, just feels right. And today's Virginia Derby is an historic running, as it very well could be the final time we see the race run on grass. It has been a turf race since its inception in 1998, but next year it's going to move to the main track to become part of the Road to the Kentucky Derby series, with horses having an opportunity to earn points toward a spot in the starting gate of the Run for the Roses. All week long here on the network, we have been celebrating Virginia Thoroughbred Week, presented by the Virginia Equine Alliance. And coming up in just a few minutes, you're going to hear from Debbie Easter, who is the executive director of the Virginia Thoroughbred Association. Debbie's going to talk about what this day means to Virginia, but she's also going to let you in on a little bit of exciting news. The future is really, really bright for horsemen, for breeders, for racing fans who love Virginia racing, because historical horse racing machines are a part of the equation now. And we have seen the impact. I just talked about the incredible purses at Kentucky Downs, and that just goes in line with the great purses at Churchill Downs and Ellis Park, which, by the way, congrats to them. They just had a banner meet, a record meet, up 20% over the previous record. Historical horse racing machines have had a massive impact, extremely positive, on racing in Kentucky. And Kentucky is now the place to race for all of the big stables. So with the historical horse racing machines a part of the equation in Virginia, you can expect big things up the road. And now with the Virginia Derby shifting to the main track, becoming part of that Derby prep race campaign, it's going to be really interesting to see how this unfolds and what types of new incentive programs develop from these changes. And Debbie Easter will talk to you about that coming up 8:15 Eastern, just after this first commercial break. Larry Collmus, the announcer at Kentucky Downs and the man who calls the Triple Crown and the Breeders' Cup, will be with me at 8:35. He's going to talk about some of the unique challenges of calling races on that kidney-shaped European-style turf course at Kentucky Downs, which is 1 mile and 5/16 in distance. Horses run uphill. They run downhill. They even have to navigate a right-hand bend at one point. So Larry's going to talk about some of those challenges, and I'm going to ask him, too, seeing all of these runners from these top barns and having to call all of these multi-million-dollar stakes races with horses that are surely going to point for the Breeders' Cup afterwards, does it help him in his prep getting ready to call the Breeders' Cup in November? Is that a thing? So I'll talk to Larry at 8:35. 9 o'clock, Kevin Kerstein looks ahead to opening night of the 14-day Churchill Downs September meet. That comes up on Thursday. He'll also look back on the record-setting meet at Ellis Park. 9:15. Make sure you're locked in for this one. Laffit Pincay III, who on October 30th, during Breeders' Cup Week in Del Mar, is going to be honored with the Jim McKay Award for Broadcasting Excellence, which is presented by the National Turf Writers and Broadcasters Association. Laffit is going to be with me at 9:15 for an extended interview. This past week, we spent about 25 minutes looking back on his career, talking about his philosophies and approach to presenting the sport of thoroughbred racing on television. So we'll talk to Laffit at 9:15. And at 9:40, I go down the road to the Breeders' Cup with trainer Rodolphe Brisset, who talks about his Forgo Stakes winner, Wilkin, who provided him with his very first Grade 1 victory of his training career, and I'm sure it's the first of many more for Rodolphe. 10 o'clock Eastern, Hour 3 begins with Vance Hanson in the TwinSpires Triple Play. Kurt Becker takes you on his weekly Stroll Through Racing History at 10:20, a great story about the history of the Virginia thoroughbred industry. And Dale and Tim with I Ask, They Answer at 10:30. Poll question this morning, who is your pick to win today's Virginia Derby at Colonial Downs? That's it. Real simple. Comment with your pick. Who is your pick to win today's Virginia Derby at Colonial Downs? I think there's a lot of ways you can go in there. You can do that at HRRN on Twitter, Horse Racing Radio Network on Facebook. And if you don't do social media, you can email the show, Mike at horseracingradio.net, and I will try to pass along those results if we have time later in the program. Who is your pick to win today's Virginia Derby at Colonial Downs? That's what I want to know with today's poll question. All right, Debbie Easter kicks it all off for us here this morning. She is the executive director of the Virginia Thoroughbred Association, and she is with me next, right after this short break on the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires on HRRN, Horse Racing's voice.
Race the TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
You're listening to Virginia Thoroughbred Week on HRRN.
There's nothing quite like Virginia's horse industry. Just ask Audley Farms' yearling manager, Delmas Soff.
Watching the animals grow from birth to training and hoping one day to actually be part of a horse who goes to the Kentucky Derby or the Breeders' Cup or something like that, which I was, and it's the greatest feeling in the world, the excitement of it. And for us to be successful at that, we need more breeders to come into Virginia.
Virginia's economy wins with horses.
Scott Mallory is once again offering a strong group of yearlings in books 2 through 6 at the upcoming Keeneland September yearling sale. with proven sires such as Curlin, Blame, American Pharaoh, and Liam's Map, as well as hot new sires such as Yopon, Bo Liam, Tacitus, and Charlatan. The Scott Mallory Consignment has something for everyone with 48 offerings, books 2 through 6 at Keeneland September. Look for future Scott Mallory consignments at Lone Star Park's TTA sale, Fasig-Tipton Timonium, and the Fasig-Tipton Kentucky October sale.
Tenda Equine and Pet Care products have been keeping world-class equine athletes happy and healthy for generations. Keep your equine athlete looking and performing well with Tenda Next Generation Wound and Skin Care Treatment, along with nutritional supplements, leg and muscle care products, salves, hoof care, poultice, topical aids, and grooming products. Visit tendahorse.com today.
Churchill Downs 14-day September meet runs September 12th through the 29th. The September meet starts the kickoff to the road to the Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks with the $300,000 Grade 3 Iroquois and the $300,000 Grade 3 Pocahontas. Both races for 2-year-olds will be run on September 14th. The meet will also showcase many horses preparing for the Breeders' Cup in November, with 11 stakes worth more than $3.5 million in purses, which are powered by the Kentucky Thoroughbred Development Fund. You are not going to want to miss the September meet at Churchill Downs. For tickets and more information, visit churchilldowns.com.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
And Silver Max now has that lead, but Finnegan's Wake is storming up on the outside. Coach Royal is right there in third. It's 4 to Easy Crossing is in fourth. Lucky Choppy trying to get some stretch kick going toward the center of this Colonial course. They're into the stretch now. And here is Silver Max. Asked the question, leads it by 2 lengths with Finnegan's Wake trying to bridge the gap on the outside. Del Romans 1-2. Lucky Choppy motoring home on the outside with some late kick, but it's Silver Max. Silver Max, sensational. 7 for 7 on the turf this year. Silver Max, a tough superstar. Lucky Choppy was second. Finnegan's Wake was third, and Optimizers was fourth in the Virginia Derby.
Dave Rodman with the call. The 2012 renewal of the Virginia Derby won by Silver Max. You heard him talk about trainer Dale Romans, who you'll hear from later in the program, 10:30 Eastern on I Ask, They Answer. That was the third victory in the race for Dale. He has had a lot of success in the Virginia Derby, and when you look at the names of the horses that he has won that race with, Kitten's Joy, hard to believe, 20 years ago in 2004, comes back in 2010 with Patio Prado, and then with Silver Max in 2012. There have been some outstanding horses to come through Colonial Downs and the Virginia Derby over the years, and later today we're going to celebrate the final Virginia Derby run on grass before the race shifts to the dirt next year to become part of the Road to the Kentucky Derby series with Churchill Downs. Exciting stuff happening. Nobody knows that better than my good friend Debbie Easter, who joins me now. She, of course, is the executive director of the Virginia Thoroughbred Association. Debbie, good morning.
Good morning, and you left quite a famous one off in English Channel, who wasn't Dale Romans, but Todd Pletcher. And back in the day, I don't know if you all remember, but we had the Grand Slam of Grass, and so if you won, they had 2 3-year-old races, the Derby and another race at Colonial, plus they tagged it with the Secretariat, I believe, at Arlington. And if you won those, all 3 of those, and the Breeders' Cup, you got some incredible, like, $5 million bonus. And English Channel just barely missed that bonus in his years that he did it. So kind of fun history to look back upon everything that happened at Colonial in the old days.
He was such a talented horse. That was back in 2005. And then a few years later, one of my all-time favorite horses and all-time favorite grass horses, Gio Ponte, won the Virginia Derby. That was in 2008 with the late Garrett Gomez for Christophe Clement and Castleton Lions, the owners. That was a special day, too.
That was. He was quite a horse.
Yep. So many outstanding horses coming through that race. And more memories set to be made this afternoon as the Virginia Derby goes as race number 10, 6:15 Eastern. I mentioned 12 races on the program with a first post of 1 p.m. Eastern time. And throwing out the poll question here this morning to our listeners, Debbie, I'm asking them who their pick is to win today's Virginia Derby, and people are chiming in on our social media pages at HRRN on Twitter, Horse Racing Radio Network on Facebook, and, of course, some folks are even starting to email the show with their selections. So it's a big day that captures racing fans, not just in the Virginia and Mid-Atlantic area, but all over the country, and that's a pretty cool thing.
I'm going to have to pay attention because I'm sure your fans are handicapping better than I do, so I can't wait to see what they come up with.
Well, listen, I mentioned the fact that this is the final time we're going to see the Virginia Derby, at least for now, on the grass, because it's going to move to the dirt next year and become part of that Road to the Kentucky Derby series with Churchill Downs. Tell me more about that decision and what that's going to look like going into 2025.
So we don't have all the details worked out, but we announced, actually the governor of Virginia announced it back on the Colonial Festival of Racing back on the Arlington Million Day that the exciting news that the Virginia Derby and Virginia Oaks were going to move to the spring. And I believe it's a weekend of March 15th. There's a hole where there are no Derby preps on that weekend. And so Churchill's looking to fill that hole and have a 50-point Derby prep and a Oaks prep. So most likely, given that a horse stays healthy, one of the horses that wins either one of those prep races will have a horse from Virginia that would run in the Derby and the Oaks, and that's very exciting.
Yeah, it's extremely exciting. There are several incentive programs that you and the team offer through the Virginia Thoroughbred Association. Will that have any impact on some of those programs, or might we see a new program emerge based on the Virginia Derby moving to the dirt?
Well, so next year is going to be a huge year for us. Not only are we moving the Derby and the Oaks to the dirt, and I believe there'll be 4 days of racing, but we also, because our days of racing are tied to the expansion of our HHR, historic horse racing machines, we're also going to move out from this year a total of 27 days of racing to probably, nobody haven't heard the final, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 44 to 47 days of racing next year, thoroughbred racing, and so that's significant. Do I see that our programs will add any new programs for next year? No, but what is hugely significant is that our programs, we're never going to have year-round racing probably here at Colonial Downs, just because the competition for horses in the Mid-Atlantic area is there's just too much competition. There isn't enough horses to have quality racing all year round. So what we have found is that our incentive programs very much support the racing that we have at Colonial Downs, and especially our certified program, where horses come and either board or train in Virginia for 6 months prior to the end of their 2-year-old year. One of the unintended consequences is that any given year if we write the condition books right, we've got 3,000 horses eligible to run at Colonial Downs. And so we've been filling a lot of races, Virginia restricted races, probably 2 a day, with Virginia bred and Virginia certified horses. And they're some of our most popular races because those certified races include horses from all sorts of state bred programs. So the races are much stronger, much better fields than your general just state bred race.
Yeah, it's a fantastic program, and you're right. That is one of the bonuses or perks to that program. You get those full fields, and you get a lot of incentives on the financial side of things too, correct?
You do. Our purses for our Virginia restricted races are 25% higher than our open races at Colonial, because we're trying to attract those horses to Colonial. And I certainly see, while we don't have all the details worked out and the HBPA's got to come to agreement with Churchill, I certainly see that during that spring festival, we're going to have to run quite a few restricted races, because think about what happens in the summertime with Colonial. Our niche has been the grass. We're not going to have the grass at that time of the year for those races. So we're really going to have to take advantage of horses that are in our programs, that are running around, at other tracks during that time and find ways to lure them here to Virginia. So something like even supercharging those purses for that spring meet is something I think we're probably going to have to look at.
Yeah, people think of Colonial Downs and they immediately think of that incredible grass course, but you do have the main track, which is fantastic as well. And now you get to kind of put that in the spotlight leading up to what is the most iconic horse race in the world, the Kentucky Derby. I'm going to imagine that down the road, that may benefit you in some ways that maybe people aren't even expecting at this point in the game. Is that a fair statement?
I think it's a very fair statement. I think it's going to be interesting. Also, I don't know if you've thought, but our Derby prep is going to be a 1-turn mile and an eighth race because that's how it works with on our dirt course, and so that's going to be interesting. It'll be interesting, I think, for horses that have just maybe broken their maiden or something going 7 furlongs a mile, that they don't have to just stretch right into that 2-turn race. I think it's going to have some interesting. We'll have some interesting horses running in that, and yes, I think that we'll be able to showcase what a good dirt course there is at Colonial Downs, which most people don't know because 90% of our races are run on the turf at this point.
Debbie, I don't know if I realized that. I don't think I realized that would be a 1-turn mile and an eighth. Is that, I'm trying to think, would that be the only 1-turn mile and an eighth race on the road to the Kentucky Derby?
I'm not 100% sure, but I'm 99% sure. I think that's probably right.
Yeah, I can't think of, off the top of my head, I'd have to go back and dive into it, but I can't think of any other race. So that's, again, another, if you want a selling point or something that would make that race unique, there it is.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. At first I was worried, well, is that going to be a gimmick? But it's got some advantages, too, to folks that don't want to jump right into that two-turn race right away. So, and the beautiful thing about the dirt course where we are, because obviously I don't know if your listeners know, but it's a 1.25 dirt course. So the turns are just very forgiving and big wide turns, very similar to Belmont, but it's just, so I think it's going to be a great time for us to showcase that dirt course.
Talking with Debbie Easter, the executive director of the Virginia Thoroughbred Association. As you can hear in the conversation, there are some big-time changes coming to their signature race, the Grade 3 Virginia Derby. Today, run on the grass. Next year, moving to the dirt, as we just outlined. Debbie, talk to me about some of the other some of the progress that's been made with that Virginia program over the past several years. There are things that are improving by leaps and bounds, and you're front and center at making a lot of those decisions with your team. So tell me about some of the things that are vastly improving over the past few years.
Sure, and I think as we grow, we realize that we are only at half of the machines that we're allowed to have here in the state of Virginia. And one of the things that we've been waiting for is we have a new Rosie's facility with a hotel and much bigger landscape than any of our other Rosie's facilities that's getting ready to open in Northern Virginia. And that's going to almost double our machines here, and it's supposed to open about the 1st of October. And so that's going to infuse a good bit more revenue into our system, which is obviously how we're going to expand the days and hopefully be able to keep our purses up around $700,000 a day. But as far as our programs, as we talked before, they really work well with our racing here. The certified program we can start with, just because we spoke of it, is, we built it for 400 horses to come into the state a year. We're getting about 800 to 900 horses per foal crop coming into this into the state, and it's incredibly popular because horses that are a state bred in another state in the Mid-Atlantic can participate in their own state bred programs, but they can also come to Virginia and participate in our restricted races for very, very meaningful purses. But the other thing is when the rest of the year, when Colonial's not running, they're getting paid up to 25% when they win a race in their own state. And so that's very exciting, or anywhere in the Mid-Atlantic. But probably our biggest change, and what's real exciting, is we've just expanded our breeders program. So our breeders program always paid for wins anywhere in North America. But we've just recently, as the breeders program starts to expand, we're going to pay for first, second, or third anywhere in North America. And so that allows our breeders program to be a year-round program, even though we're not running year-round here at Colonial Downs. And the fact that the majority of our horses that are bred here in Virginia are bred commercially and go to the sales, that just benefits our breeders who have no control over those horses coming back to Virginia to run. So I hope the rest of the country is paying attention, because it's a great program, and I think we paid something like 34% on the first, second, and third last year, anywhere in North America. So very exciting, and we're looking forward to hopefully seeing more mares here in Virginia.
That's an incredible program, an incredible addition to the program, and we see what historical horse racing has done for racing in Kentucky. And you look at Kentucky Downs and Churchill and Ellis and Turfway, and Keeneland's a little bit of a separate entity, but certainly Keeneland, the most prestigious, or one of the most prestigious tracks in the world. You see what the benefit and the impact historical horse racing has had in the bluegrass. So, Debbie, looking ahead to the future in Virginia, and you said you're only about halfway there, you get to full capacity. My goodness, the sky's the limit.
We hope so. And look, what's unique about Virginia that we do a little bit differently than other states is we run our horse organizations is run through the Virginia Equine Alliance, which is a partnership of the standardbreds, the steeplechase, and the thoroughbred flat racing folks here in Virginia. And so that alliance controls the money that comes from HHR and wagering around the state, and then we dole that out. And so we split up. We all come to agreements and split up the HHR money fairly. But we also support steeplechase racing. So in the last few years, our steeplechase racing, I think Virginia has more steeplechase racing than anywhere in the country. Plus, our purses have grown so that other than they're at Far Hills or maybe down at Nashville, our purses are going to outdo anybody else, and they're still growing. We're expanding our standardbred days. So the Alliance actually runs our standardbred days here, and they're starting to outgrow the fair track where we run the meet. So we've been talking to Churchill about building a new, possibly 5/8 3/4 mile standardbred track. So things are growing, not just with thoroughbreds, but all of the racing entities here in this state.
Exciting times to be participating in racing and breeding in Virginia. You can go to vabred.org if you want to learn more about some of the things happening, read about the incentive programs that Debbie has talked about here with us this morning. Debbie, before I let you go, we have been celebrating all week long here on the network Virginia Thoroughbred Week, presented by the Virginia Equine Alliance. And all week long on all of our shows, we've been looking back at some of the top Virginia breds of all time. We've been doing it on our social media pages. And on Wednesday evening on our Trainer Talk program, I spent an hour with the all-time leading trainer at Colonial Downs, Ferris Allen, the native of Verina, Virginia, and that was such an enjoyable visit. I have never had the opportunity to visit with Ferris on that program, and boy, what an hour that was.
I bet it was. He certainly knows the history of Colonial Downs as well as anybody. Certainly over time, I think he's been leading trainer at Colonial more than anybody. But I'll tell you a fun historical fact that happened this week. We saw, when you talk about great horses in history, we saw the colors of Ned Evans' Spring Hill Farm run at the track at Colonial. And obviously, I think most of your listeners know, but such horses as Quality Road, the Dam of Gunrunner, all sorts of great horses came from his breeding program. And he willed his colors to his nephew. and Shell Evans' son. And so we saw the first of his horses run at Colonial Downs the other day. So it was just a thrill to see those colors back running here in Virginia.
Debbie, that's a fantastic story and a wonderful way to wrap this one up. Really appreciate the visit this morning, as always, and thank you for all of your support of what we do here on the network. We love helping spread the word about all the good things happening in Virginia, and we'll continue to do it moving forward for sure. Really appreciate it, Debbie. Enjoy the day.
Thank you. We love being on here, and thank you all for all the support.
All right, nobody better. Debbie Easter, the Executive Director of the Virginia Thoroughbred Association. When I come back, we are going to turn our attention to more grass racing. You'll hear from Larry Collmus, the announcer at Kentucky Downs, as he talks about some of the unique challenges of calling races at that massive, undulating European-style oval. We'll do that next after your Legends of the Turf and this short commercial break.
Quote, "He was a man, take him for all in all, we shall not look upon his like again. Let the autumn wind harp on the dropping leaves her soft requiem over him. Let the winter's purest snow rest spotless on his grave. Let spring entwine her brightest garland for his tomb, and summer gild it with her mildest sunshine, and let him sleep embalmed in glory." Unquote. The man being profiled in this piece was a personification of the American success story of rags to riches. No better example can be found in any field of human endeavor. His career as a breeder, developer, and master salesman of both standardbreds and thoroughbreds cuts a broad swath through the annals of racing history. For 11 consecutive years, he was the nation's leading owner and breeder of horses, winning races that were bred on his farm. He was born December 28, 1856 in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and he was the oldest son of a family that came to these shores from Roscommon, Ireland in the mid-18th century. As a youth, he, being the oldest son, had to learn to fend for himself very quickly, and as a result developed a marvelous physique while excelling in boxing, swimming, running, and jumping. In his later years, he became quite friendly with the likes of Bob Fitzsimmons and Gentleman Jim Corbett, and he was a sparring partner for the legendary John L. Sullivan. He had many early trials and triumphs while overcoming many obstacles and barriers before moving to Kentucky as still a young man with limited resources, to say the least. There he purchased a few horses, and a legend in its own right was incepted. In time, he was involved in breeding, selling, and racing horses on a small tract of land along Winchester Pike in Lexington. This was the beginning of the building of a historic farm, which he named after a superb thoroughbred he raced in the late 1890s. That farm eventually spanning 2,000 acres of the beautiful bluegrass. He became a world-renowned breeder and stuck to his guns during the time when racing was in some jeopardy early in the 20th century. He was constantly encouraging young farmers to go into the breeding of thoroughbreds. Because of these activities and his virtually unbounded charity and philanthropy, his mark became very deeply emblazoned on the pages of the history of the thoroughbred world. He was a deep thinker indeed and an ardent student of bloodlines, and he coined the following phrases, quote, "No foot, no horse. Opinions die, records live." As to size of horses, well, many big turnips are indeed hollow. Frequently I hear of a horse being called a quitter, or that he stops. This is, after all, a recommendation for a horse, since it is our aim to breed very fast horses, and only very fast horses stop and quit. 5 Kentucky Derby winners first found the light of day at his farm: Old Rosebud, Sir Barton, Paul Jones, Zev, and Flying Ebony. He also bred and raced the likes of Princess Doreen and Sir Martin. The latter in his time was the only American horse ever to start as the favorite in the English Derby. As you drive out of Lexington along Winchester Pike, there is a slight elevation that slopes to and faces that road from the farm. There's a plot of ground there enclosed by a stone wall shaped like a horseshoe, and there are buried Ploddet, Starshot, Ogden, and others aptly marked by gravestones, and a separate enclosure for Nancy Hanks, the famous mare, with a granite monument. The farm, Hamburg Place. The man having been profiled died in 1929 at the age of 72, but the legend lives on. He was truly a giant in his time and was known as the Wizard of the Turf. He was John E. Madden.
Race to TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
They're at the top of the stretch, and it's still Isidoro. Here's Legend of Time cut loose to take the lead. Outside of him, Carson's Run is within a length and a half, and Royal Majesty comes through on the fence. It's Legend of Time, Royal Majesty, Carson's Run on the outside with big strides to the lead, and Carson's Run has won the Saratoga Derby Invitational. Under a perfect ride from Dylan Davis, he moved at the right time on the backstretch, and he beats Legend of Time, Royal Majesty, and Deterministic.
Join us for the FanDuel meet at Kentucky Downs now through September 11th, showcasing 7 days of racing with $34 million in purses, including the world's richest maiden races at $170,000 for Kentucky breds. The meet boasts the largest field sizes in America with 6 $2 million stakes races on September 7th and 15 of 18 stakes worth at least $1 million for Kentucky breds. Also on September 7th is the FanDuel TV U.S. Open Turf Championships, including 2 Breeders' Cup win-and-you're-in races. Reserved seats on sale at theMintKentuckyDowns.com. There's Unique, and there's Kentucky Downs.
They're off in the Kentucky Derby.
His sire is one of the most exciting young stallions in the world. His dam has become one of the most important brood mares in the industry. And on the first Saturday in May, his genetic brilliance shined brightest on racing's biggest stage.
They come into the final 16, and it is going to be Mage to win the Kentucky Derby.
Mage, standing at Airdrie Stud. Think about it.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
And they're into the stretch of the Nashville Derby. And it has been Navy SEAL all the way, drifting to the middle of the course, but holding on to the lead. Bellum Justum has come through an opening on the inside of him. Abromar is right there in contention, but Bellum Justum has taken the lead as they come into the final furlong. Then Abromar coming up the fence is Carson's Run with a late run. Bellum Justum, Carson's Run. Bellum Justum has it. Bellum Justum wins the Nashville Derby. From a photo between Carson's Run and Rothschild, which was very close, then Abromar and Navy SEAL.
Welcome back to the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires. That's Larry Collmus with the call of last Saturday's $3.1 million Nashville Derby at Kentucky Downs. Larry will have the call of all 10 stakes races set to be run this weekend in Franklin, Kentucky, and every race for that matter. He is the voice of Kentucky Downs, and he joins me now here on HRRN. Lawrence, you're here.
I am indeed. Still calling races, and in case people didn't realize, I can still at least attempt to do it. But we're having fun here in Franklin for sure.
It is always good to hear Larry Collmus on the microphone at any racetrack. Kentucky Downs, though, is so unique. It is unlike any track in the United States. The only European-style race course in the U.S. and that huge 1 mile and 5/16 length to the race course, one of the longest tracks in the nation. There have to be some unique challenges you face when you stand there getting ready to call the races.
Every day there are. It is unlike any other place I've called. Our PR director here, Jenny Reese, who used to work for the Courier-Journal for years, she says there is unique and then there is Kentucky Downs, and I have to agree with her on that one. It's just not only do you have the 1 mile and 5/16, but it is not an oval. It's shaped more like a kidney, and there's twists and turns and ups and downs and rights and lefts that you don't normally, have to deal with on a regular basis. And throw in the fact that there's almost 12 horses every race. So you have, in fact, Thursday coming up, there's 12 horses every race. So that is a challenge. Every race I go down my perch, and I call it a perch because it's not a booth. It's actually an outside position up on the third level of our tower. I go down to the second level between every race, and I go to the back and I watch the jockeys come out of the jockeys room just to make sure the silks that I have that I expect them to wear are correct, and then I can, make the corrections, whatever I have to do, because when they come onto the track, you have to know who they are. I mean, you can't fake it. You really need to know them. And every at the end of every day, it's like you've really had to actually work for a living. So it's kind of fun.
Do you remember the first time that you stood on that perch and looked out at that massive racetrack, the very first time you ever did it? Do you remember that, and what went through your mind?
Well, yeah, the first year I called here, I actually split the meet, even though it was only 7 days. Michael Rona and I had each we were going to call a few different days, and then opening day we split it. We were every other race we alternated, and I looked out there, and I kind of looked over at Michael and like, all right, what do I got to know? What's the, because he had called the year before, and the thing that you realize is because the meet is so short, you just can't get used to it. You don't have enough experience calling the races here to get as comfortable as you would at another racetrack. But I'm finding this year, I guess, just being the fourth year I've been here, that it is starting to come my way of when I should use my binoculars, when I should use my monitor, and it's a challenge for sure.
Which race distance presents the most challenging starting gate position for you?
No doubt about it. There's two of them, 6 and 6.5 furlongs. They both start away from you, so when they leave the gate, they're actually running away, and they go to a turn very quickly, and the angle right there is just unbelievable. If you're looking through binoculars, it looks like the inside horses are far in front of the outside horses, but it's not the case. And so what I'll do is I'll let them break out of the gate, and I'll mention like one horse to me that looked like they broke well, and I'll immediately shift over to the monitor because it's a completely different perspective than what I'm seeing. So I want to, kind of be calling what the people are seeing, and it's probably more accurate. So I'm, switching to that. And then by the time you get through a few horses, you can go back to binoculars because you want to get through the entire field before they start going behind trees again. So
yeah,
it's a process for sure. It's a nice deep breath and a happy time when I get to call a route race of a mile or more.
Well, and then you're doing it with the large fields. I think the average field size at Kentucky Downs is something like 11 horses per race. That's the average, which means you have even more than 11 horses in some races. How are you keeping track of all of that when you're looking back at the monitor, then going back to the binoculars?
You just do. I mean, 12 is the max. Luckily, we don't run more than 12, and I'm happy about that because that would be even tougher. But there's almost always 12. It's very rare that it's less than 12, and that's the key is to memorize those jockey silks and get them all in your head because you're not looking at a normal race that you're used to looking at. You're getting angles and different positions. And then when they turn for home, that's the other thing. It is an absolute head-on view. So you have no perspective really of where the horses are as far as who's in front. That's why I have to go back to monitor again when they come to the top of the stretch because you've got a camera angle that helps me. And then you got to go back to binoculars in the middle of the stretch. And then, by the time they get close enough, you can look at them with the naked eye. So it's back and forth. And honestly, if it's really sunny outside, you can't see the monitor very well. So it is cloudy days or make things a little bit easier.
As I was listening to you call the races and watching these horses go around that massive oval, all I could think about, Larry, is when we were in Barbados years ago, and you had the opportunity, along with announcer Dean Springer, to call a race in Barbados from that booth at Garrison Savannah, and that is an undulating turf course. Not the size of Kentucky Downs, but there is that little dip. Any similarities whatsoever to Barbados when you're calling it Kentucky Downs?
Well, yeah. I mean, the one thing that was similar, the race that I called in Barbados was a turf sprint, and they ran away from you kind of like they do here. But so you're looking at the perspective of them leaving the starting gate a different way than you're used to. They're literally running, away from where you're standing. So that was similar, but that race in Barbados is still to this day the only clockwise race I've ever called. Everything has always been counterclockwise. So that was as unique as any races I've ever called.
Talking with Larry Collmus here on HRRN. You'll be able to hear his calls coming up this weekend at Kentucky Downs. And then, Larry, after that, I guess we start focusing on the Breeders' Cup with NBC.
Yeah, I've got a lot of, I've been doing a lot of work with FanDuel TV as an analyst, and that's been keeping me busy too. So I'm traveling all over the place. After Kentucky Downs closes, I'm zipping right up to Churchill Downs, and I'll be working there for a week, and then cover the Pennsylvania Derby, and then the big day out at Santa Anita the week after that, then opening week at Keeneland, call a couple of steeplechase meets at Far Hills and in Virginia, and then it'll be time for the Breeders' Cup. So a full calendar for me, every weekend for almost the rest of the year.
You talk about the unique approach you have to take when calling it Kentucky Downs and making sure that the jockeys are wearing the correct silks, and when they come out onto the track, you better have them all down and memorized, and you said you can't fake it. Does that help you when you start looking ahead to the preparation you're going to go through getting ready for Breeders' Cup? Does it help you calling it a track like Kentucky Downs?
I think it does. That's something that you don't really think about, but the fact that you really have to work hard and be as prepared as you possibly can for these races, I guess kind of get your brain ready for what's ahead. The Breeders' Cup is a completely different story because Del Mar is much better sight lines, and there's a much easier perspective as far as calling the races, but you also have horses coming from all over the world, and big fields and all that. So it's good to get these races, under my belt to get ready for Breeders' Cup rather than, having not called for a while. I mean, for years, obviously, I was at, NYRA, and before that at Monmouth and in different places, and you're calling every day. And now that I'm not calling every day, it's good to get the reps in and call as much as I can to get ready for Breeders' Cup.
That's interesting. Have you had to change your preparation in the way your approach to getting ready for Breeders' Cup? Have you had to change that or do things a little differently now that you're not calling races every single day?
Not really. No. It's the same. So the key to that is the same as any time you're calling the races. Know who the horses are in advance, and I do a lot of preparation as far as when the time comes 2 weeks out from the Breeders' Cup. Obviously, you pay attention to all the races leading up to the Breeders' Cup, but when you're a couple of weeks out, you have a really good idea who's going to run, and Breeders' Cup will send me the jockey silks of the horses that are expected to run, and I'll start making flashcards and go through them and try to get every name in my head until I feel like I'm ready to go.
Outside of Kentucky Downs, what are some of the other racetracks you've called that have some unique challenges for a track announcer?
That's a good question. This place is so in a league by itself. I guess Saratoga was one. Saratoga's announcer's booth is much like Kentucky Downs, very low. So, you have a different perspective of when there's a few horses across the track, maybe on the backstretch, of trying to see them all, because you're not high up like you are at Churchill Downs where you can see down on them. So you really need to know the horses there too, because you might just be seeing bits and pieces of jockey silks to try to identify horses. And so Saratoga definitely one of those places. Belmont was difficult because of its size, just being a 1.5 mile track and the horses kind of looking like ants on the backstretch because they're so far behind, away from you. But outside of those two, you had Gulfstream coming out of the mile chute there where there was a tent in the way, and you just sort of like had to look at the monitor, and the same thing for the mile races at Churchill now. You're blocked, so you have to judge by what's on the monitor, and it's kind of a head-on shot. So there's different things at every track that present a challenge, and you go for it and do the best you can.
I'm glad you mentioned Belmont Park, because your call of American Pharoah winning the Triple Crown, finally the one, is played quite often. We play it here on the network, and it gets played on television all the time. Larry, that call is something that is going to go down in history as one of the things that people will always remember when they think about American Pharoah. And you had it. You had the call. It was your voice. You came up with the whole thing. How often are you asked about that particular call and that race when you're traveling around with FanDuel TV?
I get a general question a lot from people. What is the most memorable race you ever called, or what was the one call that stands out? And that's always the answer. I mean, because history was made that day, unlike any other racing day in decades. We saw a Triple Crown. None of us had seen one, unless you were older in person before. Unless you were around when Affirmed won in 1978, you never saw it. And I was the lucky guy that got to narrate it and didn't screw it up, and was very happy that all worked out.
It worked out beautifully, and Larry Collmus's voice is now going to be part of history with that call of American Pharoah, and a special moment for him and for the crew with NBC who had a chance to be part of it too. Larry, listen, man, I appreciate the visit as always. Keep up the wonderful work. It's great to hear you back on the microphone at the racetrack and calling races, and we'll look forward to Breeders' Cup down the road.
Sounds good. Hopefully everybody watches and bets on Kentucky Downs this weekend. The races are going to be fantastic. Fields are big, and looking forward to the Breeders' Cup as well.
Absolutely. The announcer, Larry Collmus, here on HRRN. When I come back, I'll get you ready for a very busy second hour of the program. It includes my lengthy conversation with Laffit Pincay III. You won't want to miss it. Really fantastic stuff. This is the Equine Forum on the Horse Racing Radio Network.
Woodford Feed, where tradition merges with technology. Family owned since 1940 and providing exceptional customer service, Woodford Feed specializes in the highest quality feed, using only the finest ingredients to ensure optimal nutrition for your horses. In addition, Woodford Feed can help with all your farm needs, including field seed, fertilizer, and weed control. So whether your horse is sprinting around the racetrack or has a foal by her side, count on Woodford Feed to provide the quality nutrition necessary to perform at the highest level. Woodford Feed, Versailles, Kentucky.
The Claiming Crown is returning to Churchill Downs Saturday, November 16th. Make plans to be part of the Claiming Horse version of the Breeders' Cup, showcasing 8 Claiming Crown races offering a minimum of $100,000. Each race will also offer a Kentucky Thoroughbred Development Fund purse supplement for registered Kentucky breds.
An invaluable goes all the way up top to win at a length and a half.
Eligibility request deadline for the Claiming Crown at Churchill Downs is Saturday, October 26th. Learn more at claimingcrown.com.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting. A teenager. Learning the lingo.
Today I'm going to help parents translate teen slang. Now, when a teen says something is on fleek, it's exactly like saying, that's rad. It simply means that something is awesome or cool. Another one is totes. It's exactly like saying, totally, just shorter. As in, I totes love going to the mall with Becker. Another word you might hear is jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad, just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Hi there, it's Scott from Pentatonics. So from the beginning of our journey in music, the foundation has been music education. It's so incredibly important that we continue to show kids the importance of music in our schools, in our homes, and even in the car. Music is such a powerful expression of emotion and individuality, and we are responsible for keeping the love for music alive. This message is courtesy of the United States Air Force.
Want to get the latest HRRN content directly on your computer or mobile device? Then subscribe to our podcast using the Podbean app or Apple Podcasts. Just go to hrrn.podbean.com on your computer and click follow, or download the Podbean app and search HRRN. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts and listen to our latest episodes anytime. Don't miss a thing. Subscribe to our podcasts today. You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
So round the far turn, Nick's Go goes on with it, opens up to lead by 2.5. Sprawls in a full-out drive. Independence Hall is as well. Tacitus comes wide for the stretch drive. Shared Sense in behind them. Racing for the 8th pole. Nick's Go opens up a little bit more. Now it's 3. Independence Hall trying to close in toward the inside. Then it's Tacitus and Shared Sense. But Joel Rosario is merely along for the ride. It is Nick's All Systems Go to the Breeders' Cup. Geared down, an effortless winner of the Lucas Classic. Independence Hall was second. It's tight for third. Shared Sense or Tacitus.
Welcome back to the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires. That was Travis Stone with the call of the Lucas Classic, won by Nick's Go so impressively. You heard him say geared down. That was in 2021. The Lucas Classic, part of a stellar September meet coming up at Churchill Downs, which begins on Thursday. And Hour 2 begins at 9 Eastern in just a few minutes with Kevin Kerstein. He will join me to talk about what that meet entails, and he'll look back on the record-setting meet at Ellis Park as well. It is a good time to be racing and owning and breeding horses in the bluegrass. No doubt about it, and records falling everywhere at that Ellis Park meet. So looking forward to Kevin kicking off Hour 2 momentarily. Also looking forward to the start of the Keeneland September yearling sale on Monday, when we get a glimpse of some of the future stars in our sport. And, you know, with over 4,000 yearlings on offer at that sale, pursuing yearlings from a consignor that has a track record for raising and selling runners is a huge advantage. And Millridge Sales is an absolutely perfect example. Their history of raising and selling racehorses is exceptional, with 39 Grade 1 winners just since 2000. And over the last 10 months alone, how about this? Millridge has been represented by 4 Grade 1 winners, with Raging Sea, the most recent, joining Preakness winner Seize the Gray, Tuz, and No Balls, who No Balls going later today at Kentucky Downs. Camp out at the Millridge consignment this Keeneland September. You won't be sorry, I can promise you that. And statistics suggest you'll give yourself the best chance for success and Grade 1 runners with that Millridge consignment. So No Balls is part of a race, the Turf Sprint, later today at Kentucky Downs. He, of course, the winner of the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint last year. And I want to give a shout-out and a congratulatory note here to jockey Flavien Prat. Flavien Prat is coming off of a stellar Saratoga meet where he set the single-season stakes record at Saratoga. Not easy to do, but what a meet he had. So congratulations to him and to all of the connections that were involved with those Flavien Prat horses. Flavien is riding 5 of the 6 stakes races, 5 of the 6 greatest stakes races at Kentucky Downs today. The one race he's not riding is the aforementioned Turf Sprint. And that's a great race. Cogburn, No Balls squaring off. We haven't seen Cogburn since that incredible record-setting run in the Jaipur. So that's going to be a fantastic showdown. But Flavien not in that race. How do you leave him out? How do you leave out? Come on, give Flavien Dale Romans. Come on, Dale, you got a horse in there. My man Dale. Give a leg up to Flavien Prat. Nobody hotter in the sport right now on the jockey side of things than Flavien. So Interesting stuff. The Flavian sitting that one out. All right, 1 hour in the books, 2 to go. I told you Kevin Kerstein kicks off hour 2 for us here this morning. Don't forget, if you missed those conversations in the first hour of the program, Debbie Easter, Larry Collmus, you can check out the podcast. But you know what to do. That's all at horseracingradio.net and on every podcast platform. But right now, we segue to hour 2 right after this 10-second pause for station identification. This is the Horse Racing Radio Network.
This is the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires.
Welcome back, hour 2 of 3. Mike Penna, Baron of the Backstretch, with you on this edition of the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires, covering a lot of ground for you here this morning. If you missed any portion of the first hour of the show, my conversation with Debbie Easter, talking about the racing in Virginia and, of course, the Virginia Derby coming up later today. Larry Collmus, talking about the uniqueness of calling races at Kentucky Downs. Well, you missed a lot. And all you have to do is head back to our website, horseracingradio.net, to listen to the podcast after we finish up at 11 a.m. Eastern. You can do that, too, on every podcast platform. So wherever you get your podcast, make sure you check out Horse Racing Radio Network and follow along with us all week long. Well, hour 2 begins momentarily with my first guest, Kevin Kerstein, who's going to look ahead to the Churchill Downs September and fall meet, which comes up starting on Thursday. He'll also look back on what was a record-breaking Ellis Park meet that just concluded. Laffit Pincay III joins me for an extended conversation coming up right around 9:17 or so stay tuned for that. And then Rodolphe Brisset going down the road to the Breeders' Cup at 9:45. Kevin, good morning, my friend. Happy to have you aboard.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike. I'm glad to be the opening act for those next 2 guests that you have. That's be quite the hour here on the show.
Rodolphe celebrating that first grade 1 of his career with that win in the Forego, and then Laffit receiving the Jim McKay Award for Broadcasting Excellence from the Turf Writers. There's a lot to talk about with those 2 individuals. I'm excited to get to it.
Yeah, absolutely. They are 2 great, people in their respected crafts, and I'm glad Laffit got that award. It was well overdue, and Rodolphe's been just such an asset here to Kentucky racing, and he's run some very promising horses at Ellis Park, and he's certainly sure to have a big hand in the Churchill September and fall meet coming up.
Well, let me tell you, my friend, you don't take a back seat to many people in this game. You are on top of the racing industry in Kentucky more than anybody I know. And you've been working at Ellis Park and kind of coordinating things with what is now a record-breaking year for Ellis Park. Fantastic meet. What was the key to all the success?
It was just the support from, both the competitor side and the horse player side. Ellis has really found, I think, its niche here in Kentucky to, really strengthen this year-round circuit here in Kentucky. And we've seen it in the quality of horses and, both field size and just the type of races in the last, 5 or so years. I was doing some statistics earlier today and just looking at the average speed figures of some of these races that are coming out of Ellis. And, the maidens and the allowance and stakes horses have improved an average of more than 3 speed figure points over the last 5 years, which is a pretty significant, sample size. So we're seeing the quality of horses improving at Ellis Park. The 3-day week racing, we had a lot of fun having, the Monday action this year at Ellis Park where, it sort of caught on late in August with, some horse players. Monday's sort of a dark day around the industry with, Saratoga and Del Mar not happening on the main stage. And so we had racing in Kentucky and Ellis, and there were some great Monday cards. The stakes program was great at Ellis Park this year. We were up 20% overall on handle, and it's a credit to all the competitors that stayed year-round here in Kentucky, those that shipped in for competing at Ellis Park, and as well as the horse players for catching on and sharing some of their bankroll between, the Del Mars and Saratogas of the world. It's great racing here in Kentucky, and it's going to continue here at Churchill Downs next week.
When you look at the names that topped the standings, Godolphin, dominating the owner standings for a second consecutive year, one of the biggest names that we have in the sport today. In the trainer side of things, you had Brendan Walsh and Steve Asmussen tie for first place, and then Jaime Torres topping the jockey standings with 21 wins from 134 starts. So some of the biggest names that we have in the sport are all supporting racing at Ellis Park, and you just went through the reasons why that meet was so successful, but you bring people there that are named Godolphin, Brendan Walsh, and Steve Asmussen, you're in good shape.
Yeah, that really helps things. And, how about Steve Asmussen running, more than 130 starts at the 25-day meet. He's just supports the program at Ellis Park year in and year out. And Brendan Walsh is absolutely loaded right now. He has so many talented 2-year-olds, turf horses in his barn. I can't wait to see the conclusion of 2024 for the Walsh barn. I think he is going to have a record year come next year in his barn, because the horses that I've seen, both that he's run at Ellis and that he has in his strings at Turfway and at Churchill, I think he is loaded for bear come the fall and into the winter and spring next year.
Well, that fall meet begins on Thursday at Churchill Downs. 14 days of racing, and you have races like the Lucas Classic. I played the call earlier of Nick's Go winning that race. There have been some fantastic horses to come through the Lucas Classic. Tell me more about what folks can expect coming up starting on Thursday.
Yeah, it's a jam-packed 14-day September meet starting on Thursday. And so we've seen, year in and year out of the September meet, there are so many horses that are prepping for the Breeders' Cup here with, the sort of training programs are going to running off of 6, 7, even 8-week layoffs to the first weekend in November. And so we're going to see a lot of those higher caliber horses here in the September meet in these 11 stakes races worth a little more than $3.5 million over the 14 days. The ACAC is a Breeders' Cup winner you're in for the Dirt Mile division, and the Lucas Classic, the Grade 2 $500,000 Lucas Classic. Those will both be run on Saturday, September the 28th, and so we'll see lots of talented horses in both of those races. The meet itself, which kicks off on Thursday, it's a Twilight Thursday, 5 o'clock first post for the 3 Thursdays in the September meet. And then you have the stakes calendar that includes the Iroquois and the Pocahontas, the kickoff legs to the Road to the Kentucky Derby and Road to the Kentucky Oaks, respectively. So lots of talented 2-year-olds that are prepping for those races. They were shortened up to a mile this year from a mile and a 16th. You also have some of the, races in the stakes schedule like the Open Mind, the Dogwood. They are very, year in and year out having some, higher quality horses competing in them. So we're going to see the horsepower. The wagering menu is great. 14 quick days. Then we're on to Keeneland, and then the fall meet that'll kick off in late October here at Churchill. So it's a fun meet to, sort of prep for the Breeders' Cup here at Churchill Downs. Lots of 2-year-olds and lots of talented horses that'll be showing up in these stakes.
When we talk about Keeneland's spring meet and then leading into their fall meet, I've always said that the fall meet feels so much more relaxed than that spring meet leading up to the Kentucky Derby. And I know what you and Darren and the team go through behind the scenes leading up to the Kentucky Derby, the tremendous amount of work that's involved with putting that show on. I have to imagine when you come to a meet like this September meet, even though it's busy, it's quick, it's only 14 days, you got the Lucas Classic, you've got the Twilight Thursdays, there has to be part of you that says, boy, I can actually breathe and enjoy this meet as opposed to Churchill's craziness leading up to the Kentucky Derby. Is that fair?
It's a little bit true. I sort of like the craziness, so I don't mind, the hectic spring meet, because we see so many memorable performances going into the Kentucky Derby. And, the September meet is short and quick, but like I mentioned, there's going to be a lot of fun races. And there are so many 2-year-olds right now that are on the backstretch, both here at Churchill Downs and just up the road at Turfway Park. And we're going to see that in these maiden special weight races come the September meet. There's going to be so many of those 2-year-old races that'll be run for sprint distances, some of the first stretching out to 2 turns. So seeing the talent and the up-and-coming 2-year-olds that can maybe make a name for themselves on the road to the Kentucky Derby and the road to the Kentucky Oaks, that'll be really exciting to see during the September meet.
Kevin, you heard me mention it in the first hour of the program. I visited with Debbie Easter, who is the executive director of the Virginia Thoroughbred Association, and she hit me with the fact that I didn't realize. I didn't know when the Virginia Derby moves to dirt next year, becomes part of the road to the Kentucky Derby point system, or point series, if you will, that that's a 1-turn, 1 1/8 race at Colonial Downs. Really interesting.
Yeah, it certainly is, and that just goes to show you the sort of the depth of Colonial Downs, and this is a really exciting addition to the road to the Kentucky Derby. There's so many people that are supporting the Virginia racing program, both on the breeder side and then at Colonial Downs with the their summer meeting that is just going to wrap up this weekend. And so between the dirt course there and then the turf too, with the I remember looking on Wednesday, the inner turf rail was at 30 feet, the outer was at 90 feet. So it's like just the scope of what Colonial Downs is. It's a 1-turn mile and an eighth race. And, that's sort of been a quiet weekend on the road to the Kentucky Derby in years past on March the 15th. So, nothing really has been happening. It leads into the Jeff Ruby and the Louisiana Derby the following week. So it's really exciting to get this addition on the stakes calendar. And it'll be who will show up in the Mid-Atlantic at Colonial Downs for this short meeting for the addition of the road to the Kentucky Derby and Oaks in Virginia.
Yeah, hard to believe that the first Saturday in May, we're sitting here, September 7th. The first Saturday in May will be here before we know it. It always goes so quickly.
238 days away.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Wow. My man, Kevin Kerstein, I told you he's dialed in when it comes to racing in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. One other thing, I'll let you go in a minute, but one other thing, Kevin, is the amount of money that is offered in Kentucky now. We're seeing Kentucky Downs celebrating what has been a spectacular race meet there. We mentioned Ellis Park and the success. Now we're going to jump into Keeneland after Churchill Downs. But the amount of money that's available, it's really incredible.
Yeah, it's very rewarding for all the people that are involved. Running these horses, from the breeders to the owners to the trainers to the jockeys. It's just really seeing the elevation of Kentucky racing on that upward trajectory. And it's, we're just getting started. We're seeing, at Ellis Park, for example, a 20% handle increase off of a record 2023. It's just been quite an amazing run here in Kentucky, and we're not stopping here. It'll be, only going upwards from here. And we're really excited to see some more types of star power that'll show up here in Kentucky. I can tell you when our folks here at Churchill Downs and up at Turfway and Ellis try and allocate stalls for the respective meets. It's very difficult to do because there are so many top name trainers that are wanting to run more horses here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and that's great to see. And it's only going to be even more increased in years to come.
Twilight Thursday, kicking things off at Churchill Downs coming up this Thursday. $2 select domestic beer, live music, food trucks. It's all happening at Churchill Downs with that September meet. Kevin Kerstein with me here on HRN. Kevin, appreciate the visit, the look ahead, and the look back at that successful Ellis Park meet. Congratulations. Let's keep it rolling.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Mike, and looking forward to seeing everyone out here for the September meet. Best of luck.
All right, all the best, my friend. Kevin Kerstein on HRRN. When I come back, you're going to hear my extended conversation with Jim McKay Award winner Laffit Pincay III, the son of the Hall of Fame jockey Laffit Pincay Jr., has been doing the broadcasting work on television for quite some time now, and he is so good, and you're going to hear from him coming up next. This is the Equine Forum presented by TwinSpires on HRRN.
Race to TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
The horse industry contributes so much to Virginia. Just ask Garrett Lipscomb of Montpelier Feed and Seed.
Agriculture is a big business in the Commonwealth. My family's been in the horse industry for many years. I'm the place that you go when you need to feed your animals. I graduated from Virginia Tech and went immediately back into work in the community. The horse industry in Virginia creates a large impact on my business, and it's important to me to keep Virginia in agriculture and to keep the horse industry thriving.
Virginia's economy wins with horses.
Join us for the FanDuel meet at Kentucky Downs now through September 11th, showcasing 7 days of racing with $34 million in purses, including the world's richest maiden races at $170,000 for Kentucky breds. The meet boasts the largest field sizes in America with 6 $2 million stakes races on September 7th and 15 of 18 stakes worth at least $1 million for Kentucky breds. Also on September 7th is the FanDuel TV U.S. Open Turf Championships, including 2 Breeders' Cup win-and-you're-in races. Reserved seats on sale at theMintKentuckyDowns.com. There's Unique, and there's Kentucky Downs.
It's time now to shine the spotlight on the Darley Taking the Reins Performer of the Week.
Down the center of the racetrack, Immersive continues to close stoutly. They're in the final furlong, and it's quiet side. Immersive getting closer with every stride, within a length and a half. Immersive or quiet side, Immersive and Manny Franco to win the spin-away.
Immersive, the daughter of Darley stallion Nyquist, remained undefeated as she captured the Grade 1 spin-away at Saratoga last weekend. That impressive win makes her your Darley Taking the Reins Performer of the Week. Darley stallion Nyquist. Only Gunrunner can top Nyquist's 3 Grade 1 winners this year. He now has 8 Grade 1 juveniles from 5 crops. Only Danzig ever had more. His 6th crop of yearlings are at the sales now. Just imagine. Learn more about Nyquist and all the Darley stallions by visiting DarleyAmerica.com.
Colonial Downs summer racing season is here. Weekend racing returns with afternoon racing on Thursdays and Saturdays and a new late afternoon post of 4:30 p.m. Eastern on Fridays. Back is our popular 12% takeout pick 5, now offered twice daily. Join us for our biggest day of the season on August 10th at 1 p.m. for Colonial Downs Festival of Racing, featuring 7 stakes races, including the Grade 1 Arlington Million. And then September 7th, we'll wrap up the season with the Virginia Derby. Colonial Downs, rich history, bright future.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
They're into the stretch. It's Whale in front by 2. In the center of the track, fight over. On the outside, it's Oxford Greco. Coach Meets Chad now taking forward. Tennis Life Magic on the extreme outside. Gate Dancer with Valley Time. They're nearing the finish. It's all Whale. He's there by 4 lengths. On the outside, Coach Meets Chad second. It's Whale winning the Derby, gets it by 3 lengths, finishing second. Coach Meets Chad. It's a photo for third.
Well, that's the way it sounded beneath the TwinSpires 40 years ago. Can you believe it? Mike Battaglia with the call of Swale winning the 1984 Kentucky Derby under jockey Laffit Pincay Jr. for owners Claiborne Farm and legendary trainer Woody Stevens. Today, the Pincay name remains synonymous with racing, not only because of one of the greatest jockeys ever to sit in a saddle, but also because of his son, Laffit Pincay III, who has made his mark as one of the leading horse racing broadcasters in our sport today. On October 30th, during Breeders' Cup Week at Del Mar, Laffit is going to be honored with the Jim McKay Award for Broadcast Excellence, which is presented each year by the National Turf Writers and Broadcasters Association. And Laffit is kind enough to spend a little time with us here this morning. Laffit, congratulations on that well-deserved honor, my friend.
Thank you, Mike, so much. Too kind. Appreciate the very warm welcome. That call from Mike Battaglia in the 84 Derby never gets old. And congratulations to you as a finalist this year. This award, I know last year was my first time being on the ballot, and that's where that feels like the win. Anything being associated with the name McKay in this industry where broadcasting or television is concerned is the greatest of honors. So congratulations to you as well.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you. When you hear the name Jim McKay, what thoughts come to mind, Laffit?
Class personified. It's interesting how you observe somebody and look up to somebody, admire somebody from a distance, as I did as a kid. And I don't really think I understood why I would be interested in what Jim McKay was saying on television, but I would associate it with something important and be drawn to a certain storyline and just admired his work. And then years later, very early on in my career, you get to meet that person. and that person is everything you hope they would be and more. Because sometimes you meet somebody you admire from a distance, and then maybe you're a little disappointed. Maybe they're not quite not quite who you thought they might be, and that can be a real letdown. He was as classy, as humble, as gracious. As far as I interviewed him, and I was shaking. This was at the Maryland Million a couple of years before he passed, 05, 06, and I was shaking because here's, you want to do a good job. And this is, I'd only been in television for, a couple of years at that point. And he took all the time and had the, I remember him saying, I've watched your work. You do a good job. I mean, he was probably making it up, but that's not the point. What that meant to me early on in my career, to hear that from, wow, Jim McKay has actually, seen my work. And he was a big fan of my father's. He that Derby call you just heard, Jim interviewed my father shortly thereafter. My dad thought the world of him. Won a Maryland Million race for Jim on a horse named after his son, Sean's Ferrari. And then now, all these years later, when I first learned that I was associated or a finalist for this particular achievement for this award, just the name alone, how everything coming full circle, and somebody who first really inspired me as a kid to be associated with anything with his name, it meant the world.
Yeah, and congratulations, too, to our broadcasting brethren, Todd Schrupp, who was also a finalist for this award this year, and very, very well-deserving in his own right. And, when you talk about interviewing Jim McKay, and you said you were shaking, Laffit, I believe that is the most difficult thing to do in broadcasting, to interview another highly accomplished broadcaster that you have watched over the years and maybe even idolized in some respects. That, to me, is more difficult than any other interview that you were going to do as a broadcaster. I don't know if you agree or not.
1,000%.
Yeah.
You start playing a little bit of defense. You're just like, don't screw up. Don't take any chance. Let's just play this safe.
Yes.
Because they know the difference between you can sense someone's anxiety. You can sense someone how nervous they are. And you don't want to come off like an amateur in front of an idol. I remember when I was rehearsing for this was at NBC at the Preakness, one of the first Preaknesses I worked, and we were rehearsing for the undercard show, and right before the big show started, and I'm like 10 feet from Bob Costas. I'm like, really? I can see him out of my peripheral, and I actually said to him, Bob and I at a horse racing event, all we do is talk baseball, and I'm like, you can't stand there. You can't do this to me, man. It puts you you're in a situation there that somebody who you think is of the very best at what they ever did, and you want to. It's not about impressing somebody, but I guess there's such a mutual respect there that they understand that you respect the art enough, that you put in the time, that you were prepared, that, yeah, maybe you do have a hint of ability, but you sure as hell don't want to choke right in front of somebody you think so highly of and leave that as their lasting impression.
Yeah, very much so. Let's go back to the beginning here a little bit, Laffit, and talk about what led you to this career in broadcasting. You grew up in Southern California, the son of one of the greatest jockeys of all time, and you were kind of like many other kids. You wanted to be an athlete. You didn't ever plan on being a jockey, because I've read many stories and conversations that you've had with people where you said, I was always going to be too big. But there was an opportunity for you to be an athlete. Didn't quite pan out. You were pretty good, though.
I pitched for years. I was a good, hard-throwing, left-handed pitcher with a lot of natural movement on pretty much everything I threw. I didn't have to. I had a decent changeup. My curveball on any given day, I just didn't know where it was going. Control was always an issue, but I threw hard with a lot of natural movement. And look, I was never under the impression that, there isn't a lot of call in the majors for like a 5'8" left-handed pitcher whose fastball tops out in the low 80s. This is in high school,
Right.
And so even though I always knew I wanted to be associated with sports in some capacity. And so when, you're not going to, even if I was 4 or 5, Dad wouldn't have let me ride because of how truly difficult the life of a jockey is and the sacrifice. And even when you're doing so well and at the top, the idea that you're having to starve yourself, the idea that there's that's a completely different conversation. As dangerous as it is, I don't think he would have allowed it, even if we wanted it, even if that was a possibility. But what I did decide was, somebody suggested after high school, what are you thinking about doing? What are you interested in? And I had just in the last couple of years taken interest in my father's career and dug up all of his old VHS tapes. When I got done watching all of those races, I found his treasure trove of beta tapes and had those transferred to VHS. This is the, early 90s.
Yeah.
And after watching all of it, I found how tuned in I was to, depending on the broadcast, how much of a difference it made the outcome of the race to the viewer. Because to me, these races, I'm seeing them for the first time, even though they're 20 years old, 10 years old. And when I got to all of the NBC Breeders' Cup races, I watched them over and over and over again. And I was like, that's it. That's what I want to do. I want, whether it's, and it wasn't necessarily horse racing. Listen, I wanted mainstream. I was a huge football fan, big baseball fan, obviously, basketball. Horse racing wasn't like, okay, that's it. But the way these sport, the way the event is covered makes a difference in how you feel about the outcome. And I think that's, something I just stumbled onto. And that was probably when I decided, that's what I want to explore.
What was your first job in broadcasting?
Oh, wow. I was the press box steward at Hollywood Park for Mike Mooney. Hired me a Yule Wide as well back in 96, 97. And I did that where I would print past performances and get the media guides together for all of the journalists coming in covering the bigger races that weekend. I was kind of in charge of making sure they had everything they needed in order to write and cover their stories.
I read an article as I was preparing to have this conversation with you, and I believe it was in Daily Racing Forum, and I think it was about 10 years ago, and it talked about one of your first jobs in New York, and your dad was a bit concerned because it was a bit of a dangerous neighborhood, if you will, that you were working in. Tell me about that.
My first on-air job was at News 12 in the Bronx, and we're not talking like by Fordham. We're not talking like Riverdale. I mean, we're talking about the Boogie Down, right? And in an area where look, there's a lot of news happening. There's a lot of stuff going on. They wanted young, cheap, inexpensive, inexperienced on-air personnel that would do everything. Aside from mopping up, it was a one-man band. You ran around with a tripod. You would set up the tripod. You would shoot everything yourself. You would have to, I'm not going to take you through the long drawn-out process of trying to set up a stand-up with one person, no cameraman. Your own segment producer, your own editor. You did everything on your own. But to get a job on air in what was considered the number one market, that's still New York City, right? Yeah. And covering, instead of the Yankees, I'm covering Christ the King Pee Wee football, right? Everything, all of the smaller stuff. But it didn't matter. It was fine. It was getting reps. And I was probably 21. And not only the reps that I got in front of a camera, even if it was all on tape and you could, there was never any real pressure as far as doing anything live. Getting to know and understand what happens behind the scenes, because of we were the behind the scenes as well, allowed me to appreciate everything that goes into what making a good product is in television from the other side of the camera and understanding and respecting how big of a part of the finished product that actually is.
Yeah, that was Jay Hovde, by the way, who wrote that article about you 10 years ago in the Daily Racing Forum. It was a really cool read to go back and kind of flip through some of those stories in there. What led you then back to horse racing and becoming a horse racing broadcaster?
On needing a job. I actually lost that job because I came out to California and stayed in California while my dad was trying to break Bill Shoemaker's all-time win record. It's not something that you know when it's going to happen, and you know eventually it's going to happen. Some static with my boss and I before that kind of led to that unfolding the way it did. And I'm not like the tragedy would have been had I left and not been there. I wanted to be there to support my father and my family. And when I returned to New York shortly thereafter, there's the door. And so while I left with a tape and I was able to, an agent signed me, a good agent, looking and trying to get on-air work with limited reps, it was difficult. So it was really more a matter of just needing a job. And it was Amy Zimmerman who hired me at Santa Anita in March of 2003 with the idea that there was a new racing channel that was about to be launched covering the Stronach tracks or whatever we were calling it at the time. And I went in for an interview and Amy hired me. I told her I needed to kind of get a grasp of what they wanted from an on-camera presence, and I didn't know that I was ready for that in racing, so she actually let me produce for 6 months to kind of get a better feel. And then at that Oak Tree meet, I started with my, getting a few reps in front of the camera because I focused on mainstream sports, and it was kind of just learning as we went. And getting all those reps before social media, given the option to suck without anybody watching was massive. And that's how, that's essentially, that was the start of it.
Talking with Laffit Pincay III here on HRRN. Laffit, earlier we discussed the time that you had the opportunity to sit down and visit and interview Jim McKay and what that was like. You had a tradition when you were working with HRTV of interviewing your dad every year on his birthday, December 29th. Tell me a little bit more about that and how special that must have been.
That goes back to the conversation we had about not wanting to, there's another one, an interview you don't want to screw up, right? But our relationship is such that we've just become closer friends as we've both gotten older. And I know that the viewers, that was something they really enjoyed. It was something that he would add, by the third, fourth year, he would remind me, hey, my birthday, are we going to do this? Yeah, of course. And I got to a point where, the first time I ever interviewed him, it was after he won the Monrovia. In 2003, New Year's Eve, I believe, Little Sister Stitch, I think her name was, I'm calling him Laffit, right? Because obviously at that point, I'm probably, I don't know, some sort of subconscious insecurity about, the obvious, reek of nepotism there, which as I've often said, nepotism gets a bad rap. And I remember how nervous I was interviewing him in the winner's circle. That's the only time I've ever rooted against my father. It was the first winner's circle interview I'd ever done. Huge field. She's not a favorite, like anybody but her. And naturally, he wins, and there we go. So at first, those moments I remember being really nervous because I don't, you want to impress Dad. And and as we did it, year after year, it became something I really looked forward to and, treasure the fact that I have that, I can watch that whenever I want. And as much as I know the viewers enjoyed it, it was something he and I really like doing every year as well.
I'm sure that's going to be a memory that you'll cherish forever, Laffit. But let's talk about some of the other more memorable moments you've had the privilege to be part of as a broadcaster on the horse racing side of things. What are some of the memories that stand out to you when you think back on your career?
Wow. The the first Kentucky Derby I ever covered as with NBC. That was, I remember when we started the reporter whip around, and it went from, the beginning of the broadcast, and when they went to the reporters, it was Bob Newmeyer, and then Kenny Rice, and then myself, and Bob and Kenny, and this was the year, I believe I'll have another one. I was so nervous, and their voice, they had this calming presence about them that, like, you're just telling a story. And while I couldn't make it sound as easy or as fluid as they could, certainly, that kind of, I could take a deep breath after hearing their voice. So being there and realizing this is, because in this industry, naturally, that's the event you really want to be a part of, and to be part of a broadcast at the highest level covering the biggest sport, like that is the goal. That's certainly one that comes to mind. Interviewing winning connections in the infield at Churchill Downs, having a chance that for the first time that was Mario and Doug, and I think the following year with Shug and Joel McCord. Certainly those are moments that come to mind, and being in the winner's circle after Justify won the Triple Crown. I was there for American Pharoah, but just if you're asking of moments that really have kind of stuck, speaking with Bob Baffert and Mike Smith after Justify won a Triple Crown, and certainly those are some of the moments that really do stick out.
Yeah, those are special moments. And listening to you talk about your first Kentucky Derby telecast, I was thinking back to our first one in 2011 when we were standing there and we're getting ready to come on the air, and I'm getting ready to open the show on national radio for the very first time for the Kentucky Derby. And I had many of those same emotions and butterflies, and I might even had a few tears in my eyes as I was getting ready to do that. You got to kind of block all that out, right? But it's difficult to do in those types of moments.
At the end of the day, and that was, so I hosted the undercard show for Versus before it became NBCSN. Mm-hmm. It went from Outdoor Network to Versus to NBCSN. Your first Derby was my first Derby, working on the undercard. I didn't work on the big show, on the big NBC show, till the following year. But yeah, Animal Kingdom was my first. And I remember, I think there's more emotion when you get the call that, the Yankees just called and want you to play center field. My God. That moment I'll never forget. I had to pull over because that's difficult to put into words what that meant. And then walking into Churchill, not as a fan, not the son of a jockey, but as part of the broadcast team, that brings about a certain emotion. If it all goes well in the end, that brings about more emotion. But I think in the moment right before, for me, when I start, whether it's anxiety or nerves or focus, you have to block that stuff out and try to find a place where you're just centered and in the moment and breathing, and then you can just do your thing. Otherwise, those are moments that, as I don't have to tell you that your ability to communicate will become impacted because of what anxiety and nerves. You don't want to choke, and you have to, that's, learning how to compartmentalize, being in the moment and remembering, I want to be here. It's not, I'm afraid of this. There's certain, if you don't want the ball in the last 2 minutes, then you don't want the ball in the last 2 minutes, and give it up. Give it to somebody else. Maybe they'll, hit the big shot. And you want to be the guy that wants the ball when it matters most. It's not always easy to find that place emotionally, mentally. It can be elusive, but that's what you want in that moment.
Okay, with that being said, Laffit, tell me about your approach and your philosophy when it comes to presenting horse racing on television.
It's a concept of being familiar with the material that is going to resonate with the viewer most, that doesn't follow horse racing on a day-to-day basis. The bigger the show, the more novice the viewer. Give them a reason to care. In a Travers that is always a big race and always matters and always has championship implications. No, this is different. This is something that if you can't spell horse racing, you're going to want to see. it goes, the girl competing with the boys. I remember it's one of my favorite lines in racing and a broadcast ever when Donna Brothers picked Rachel Alexandra to win the Preakness because, quote, because she runs like a girl. Like, it just stuck. And that's, anybody can relate to this story. If you don't watch horse racing, you see her, she's faster than the boys that are supposed to be better than her. Like, this hasn't happened since, the dark ages. And now you have them. Now you've latched your hooks into the viewer, and they're going to stick around, whether it's 3 hours or however long it is, to tune in and watch that race. And you want to be in a place where you can just comfortably deliver that message as simple as possible. And again, in those moments, I think we all have our, little sort of whatever your pregame ritual might be to get you in the best possible place, which obviously starts with, get a full night's sleep, because that's really easy to do when your anxiety's really going.
Right.
All of that has to be navigated so that you're in the best place. And again, it can be elusive. Sometimes game day is there and maybe you don't have your best. Maybe you're not as sharp as you'd like to be. Maybe you're not as focused as you'd like to be. And you have to kind of figure it out on the fly. But finding that sweet spot of just being still energetic while controlled and breathing being everything is kind of that's where you want to be.
Laffit, you've done it for a long time, and you've done it as well as anybody, my friend. And I'm going to end this conversation by congratulating you once again on that Jim McKay Award for Broadcast Excellence. Perfect name for somebody like yourself, because you've done it at a high level for a long time. And, man, I appreciate it. Thanks for the conversation here this morning, and well done, my friend.
Much, much appreciated, Mike. Thank you, and thank you for having me on.
All right, that's Laffit Pincay III here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. When I come back, you'll get a chance to hear from trainer Rodolphe Brisset as he talks about his first career Grade 1 win, which came in the Forgo Stakes at Saratoga. We will do that next as we go down the road to the Breeders' Cup here on the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires on HRRN, Horse Racing's voice.
Race to TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Scott Mallory is once again offering a strong group of yearlings in books 2 through 6 at the upcoming Keeneland September yearling sale. With proven sires such as Curlin, Blame, American Pharaoh, and Liam's Map, as well as hot new sires such as Yopon, Bo Liam, Tacitus, and Charlatan. The Scott Mallory consignment has something for everyone with 48 offerings, books 2 through 6 at Keeneland September. Look for future Scott Mallory consignments at Lone Star Park's TTA sale, Fasig-Tipton Timonium, and the Fasig-Tipton Kentucky October sale.
In Virginia, horses create jobs. Just ask equine veterinarian Dr. Lindsay East.
Horses really do make up a big part of our economy. There's barns all over the place. You have little kids that take riding lessons. You have people that go on trail rides, shopping at tack stores and feed stores, farriers that come and do horses' feet. There are so many jobs, whether it's lay workers or professionals, that impact the economy.
Virginia's economy wins with horses.
In 1993, Dr. John West showed that EIPH occurs during exercise when the blood vessels in the lung rupture. This is due to stress caused by high blood pressures on the inside of the vessel and strong suction forces on the outside. Only flare strips and Lasix, used together or alone, have ever been clinically proven to reduce EIPH. Lasix works by reducing the high internal vessel pressure, and flare strips work by reducing the suction forces on the outside of the vessel. See the science at flarestrips.com.
It's time to go down the road to the Breeders' Cup on the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires on HRRN.
They're at the top of the stretch, and Mulligan turns for home, full of run, 3-length lead. Gun Pilot tips out to try and get to him in second. They're in the final furlong, and Mulligan, with powerful strides, has built it up to 4. Gun Pilot is no match. Neither are any of the others. Mulliken outclasses them in the four-go, wins it by almost 6 lengths. Gun Pilot was second. Anchor third. Cagliostro started picking it up late.
Welcome back to the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires. Frank Miramati with the call of Mulliken's dominating win in the Grade 1 four-go at Saratoga. That was on August 24th. For trainer Rodolphe Brisset, and a special moment for him and for his team, is that is the first Grade 1 win of his career. There have been Grade 2s, there have been Grade 3s, but that is the first Grade 1, and he has it with a star in Mulliken. And he's with me now to go down the road to the Breeders' Cup here on HRRN. Rodolphe, congratulations.
Well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
You're listening to that call. What was going through your mind?
Well, I mean, obviously, good memories. It was kind of a little bit overdue, but you can't. They're not easy to run. They're not easy to win. So, it was time for us and for me. But I'm glad it happened with that horse and for that ownership too. It's you get addicted. So now hopefully we can get another one.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you get that monkey off your back, right? And all of a sudden they start coming more frequently and easier. Grade 1s are never easy to win, but you have to think, Rodolphe, that this is not going to be the only Grade 1 you ever win in your career.
Well, I mean, let's not. Let's try to regroup and win another one. I'm not gonna be. No, I think I'm mature enough as a trainer and learn enough the past 8 years where I'm not gonna comment, make any comment like that. If hopefully we can win another one, but you need to have the horse, and without the horse, it's not possible. So, like I said, they're not easy to come around.
As he's running away from the field, he wins that race by nearly 6 lengths. What was going through your mind? What were the emotions like as you're watching him pull away?
Well, it was actually a little bit weird because my wife was getting ready our next runner in a Grade 1. So she was in the holding barn, and she's been a big help since day one, to us. And the fact we were having back-to-back Grade 1, you obviously you enjoy the moment, but you do have to regroup pretty quickly. Even more when you think you have back-to-back Grade 1 with a chance. Obviously we were not 50-1 in the next one. I think he was 6 or 7-1, and he just won a Grade 2 pretty easy world record. So we really think we were back-to-back with a chance. So, enjoy the last 8, and then, the 5 minute, 10 minutes with the whole team, the groom, Maurizio, and then, obviously, Elliot and the whole WinStar team, who they've been, I've been with them and they've been with us since day one. So that was kind of come in full circle to be able to knock down the first Grade 1 with WinStar, who we start as a pre-training trainer, pretty much we can say, and then we got lucky where we got a couple of horses we kept and done well enough where we are able to have a couple of horses every year. We train and like I said, they've been supporting us since day one.
How did you celebrate the big win that night?
Well, I was in bed by 9. So,
just like any trainer.
Well, no, we, like I say, it was kind of monkey off the back, pressure, a little bit the pressure. Even if we handled it pretty good, you just take a big breather, and so we enjoy pizza. We were lucky enough where we were staying with some of my main owner, the storyteller, the Nixon, and we just enjoy a pizza at home and watch couple replay, and then we were up at 3:30 the next day. I have a filly I liked for WinStar, actually, a Mackenzie filly run in Ellis. So I was in a plane by 5 and heading to Evansville to run horses in Ellis. So, but it's I guess getting older and realizing stuff you you learn how to enjoy those things a little bit different than when you're 20.
Mulliken is now a perfect 4 for 4 here in 2024. What's next for him?
Well, it's we still working on that. We got 10 weeks between the Forago and the Breeders' Cup Sprint. It's 99% sure I'm leaning toward the spring, and I think we talked with Mr. Walden, and we kind of agree about that. Now, we have to see if we want to have a race in the middle or not. Elite Power won it last year, been beat in a Forago, and kind of regroup. I think he was like 30 or 40 days without breathing, and then got ready for the Breeders' Cup and won. Pretty impressive. Our horse, we know he likes to run fresh, but at the same time he has run very good at 4 or 5 weeks too. Number are proven on both sides. If we wait the Breeders' Cup or if we run in the middle, my guess would be the Phoenix will be the race we are looking at if we run him in the middle. It's home off of his store, 5 weeks from the Grade 1 and then 4 weeks to the Breeders' Cup. So, I don't think we will want to go anywhere else. So my guess, and it will be a decision we'll make in the next 10 days, if we point for the Phoenix in the middle, or if we go just straight to the Breeders' Cup.
I mentioned that he's perfect this year, 4 for 4. Last year, Rodolphe, he's 1 for 5. So what's been the key to him developing into this really good racehorse here in 2024?
Well, I think he's like, first of all, we don't crank them, terribly tight to run first time out. So, I would say took him a race or two to broke his maiden, but just that time to figure out. So I don't think the 1 for 5 was really an issue. And then we did have to deal with him a little bit in the gate. He's never done anything bad, but he does that little movement with his head sometime, and it took us a couple of weeks to figure out what to do in there. He's such a cool horse in the morning. He doesn't do anything wrong in the morning. You can stand him as much as you want, but in the afternoon, I guess with the adrenaline of racing, he kind of like to go in there and make the movement down with his head. And you have to have the starter, you have to have the guy in the gate and the jock, everybody on the same page. He's not a horse you want to reach and try to jock him back off, that kind of stuff. He does that movement. You kind of want to leave him do it. So you have to see, how quick you load, if you load, early, if you load late. So, we just learn those things, and, they don't, even if you hear every day with them, that's some kind of stuff. Sometimes it takes a couple of weeks or months to figure out, even more when you have a horse like him, who I say is pretty easy to be around in the morning, but he does that in the afternoon. So after the July race, if you go back to the replay, you will see he acted up in there a little bit, and they kicked the gate, and he was absolutely not ready, and he broke dead last, and it just feel like he was maybe, sometimes it's not just the physical, it's same than people, in the mind. Maybe you just need to mature and have a break, and that's what we did, right by the horse, and came back strong.
You settled your first Breeders' Cup starter last year with Hugh Geary in the Filly and Mare Sprint. What can you take away from that experience, Rodolphe, that helps you going into this year's Breeders' Cup?
Well, I'm going to repeat myself again a little bit. I think obviously you've been put on a map because you run a horse under your name, but you have to remember it's 15 years of experience before, and I've been very, very lucky to pretty much go in every Breeders' Cup with the Mud team, and we have been around a lot of good horses, and obviously won some. So just that's where you learn more than when you're on your own. That experience, it's where you have to be able to the transcript than when you're on your own. So it was we have a lot of fun. I may have actually enjoyed more as a trainer than when I was an assistant, because you gotta be in control of everything from A to Z when you're the assistant. When you're trainer, you have people working with you, for you, and then so you kind of have to delegate, so you can enjoy a little bit more. But at the same time, he was, he was a great experience, and obviously she ran big, and hopefully we can do that again.
Rodolphe, it's always great to catch up, my friend, and all the best going down this road to the Breeders' Cup with Mulliken and all the other runners that you're going to lead that direction. Always fun, and best of luck.
Well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate it, and thank you for having me.
All right, that is trainer Rodolphe Brisset going down the road to the Breeders' Cup here on HRRN. When I come back, I'll take a look at a few dates in racing history as they apply to this weekend, and I'll tell you what's ahead in hour number 3. This is the Equine Forum on the Horse Racing Radio Network.
James Brown and Bill Cowher welcoming you back to Dennis Melvin's house. It's time for the Midnight Snack Run.
This is one tricky obstacle course. Sticking to healthy habits in this kitchen is going to take focus and determination, but it can be done, JB.
He's already entered the snack part of the course, and he's eyeballing a jar of chocolate candy.
That is tempting right off the start.
Uh-oh, he's reaching, Bill, but he pushes it away.
Great stiff arm.
He's approaching a plate of delicious-looking iced cookies.
Oh, Dennis, you only want one of those.
He blows right by him for the apple.
Oh, the fridge. It's make or break time, JB.
He stares down some rich-looking treats. Uh-oh, looks like he's headed for the soda. Wait, he jukes left, grabs the water bottle, and shuts the door with his elbow in record time.
Unbelievable move. I gotta see that again.
And he's out. He even turned off the light.
That's the way you execute a midnight snack run.
Stand Up to Cancer and Rally want you to reduce your risk for cancer.
Go to takeahealthystand.org.
All over America, people are taking the National Radon Test. Have you heard of radon?
Is that a gas?
Is it something that comes up out the ground or something?
Well, it's like poison gas. Something dangerous that you're supposed to check on to make sure it's not in your home.
Now it's your turn. Answer true or false. Radon is a radioactive gas. True, radon is a radioactive gas. True or false? The Office of the Surgeon General recommends that all homes be tested for radon. True, your home should be tested.
I didn't know that, no.
True or false, radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer. True.
True, I didn't know that.
Radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer. Answer true or false. Homes with radon problems can be fixed. True. Homes with radon problems can be fixed.
So what do you do about it? I'm going to dial the number and call.
1-800-SOS-RADON.
If I don't take care of it, nobody else will.
Keep your family safe from radon. Call now.
1-800-SOS-RADON. Mr. Rogers said, look for the helpers. Can always find people who are helping. Thank you to all the first responders who put their lives in danger to help us when my brothers and sisters need them. We look out for the helpers because they look out for us. Thank you, first responders! Thank you, first responders!
Learn how you can help first responders by texting BRAVE to 24365.
Hey, this is Bobby Newman. Join me every Friday afternoon to dive deep into handicapping the races. We'll cover the live action from some of the biggest tracks in the country, talk to some of the major players in the game, and hopefully make a little money along the way. You can also call the show to share your opinions, ask a question or two, or maybe just vent about some bad beats. It's Betting with Bobby every Friday from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern on Sirius 162, XM 207, online channel 999, or streaming live at horseracingradio.net.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
Mike Penna, Baron of the Backstretch, getting ready to wrap up hour 2 of 3 on this edition of the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires. Been a fun first couple of hours, and we've talked about an awful lot of things pertaining to the world of thoroughbred racing in the first 120 minutes. Plenty more coming your way in hour 3, which includes the TwinSpires Triple Play, Kurt Becker's Stroll Through Racing History, and Dale Roman's Tim Wilkin with this week's edition of I Ask, They Answer. But it is time now to take a look at a few dates in racing history as they apply to this particular weekend, and a big weekend for a couple of notable jockeys, including Bill Shoemaker, because it was on this day in 1970 that the late Hall of Famer surpassed Johnny Longden's then record of 6,032 wins when he piloted Dares J to victory at Del Mar and became the world's winningest jockey. Tomorrow, September 8th, 1990, the anniversary of Bill Shoemaker scoring his first stakes victory as a trainer when he sent a 5-year-old mare to victory at Del Mar. That was Baldemaro, the Irish bred, who got the victory for him September 8th, 1990. And one more for you, September 8th, 2002. On his 41st birthday, Mario Pino became the 18th jockey to ride 5,000 winners by visiting the winner's circle twice at Delaware Park. Pino got his 5,000th win when he guided Outdone to victory in the 9th race. Great stuff. Big weekend for a couple of notable jocks. 2 hours down, 1 to go here on the Equine Forum. If your local station is leaving us at this time, you can continue listening to the third hour of the program nationwide on Sirius XM satellite radio. That's Sirius 162, XM 207. And you can stream us live on our website at horseracingradio.net and tune in the Louisville, Kentucky market on ESPN 680. 2 hours down, 1 to go. Kicks off with the TwinSpires triple play. Vance Hanson doing the honors next. This is the Horse Racing Radio Network. I'm back right after this 10-second pause for station ID.
This is HRRN, horse racing's voice.
As they arrive at the 316th pole, here's Red Knight, Zulu Alpha on the outside, and Arklow down toward the rail. The three of them are right together as they come into the final furlong. Arklow, Red Knight, Zulu Alpha, third is Arklow. Arklow's got it close to home from Red Knight. Arklow and Florent Giroux have won. Some Like It Hot Brown on the inside, a Tone right up alongside. The two of them are stride for stride, a Tone and Some Like It Hot Brown. Field Pass is third. Up the rail, Mr. Dumas trying to make a late run. It is still Some Like It Hot Brown, a Tone and Mr. Dumas. Some Like It Hot Brown all the way in the WinStar Mint Million.
Welcome to the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires.
And the Spirit and Glory trying to come down the outside. Still many chances at the furlong pole. Here's Spirit and Glory right down the crown of the track. Lady Pooty tries to battle on with Sparkle Blue, but it's Spirit and Glory and Irad Ortiz going clear to win the Virginia Oaks here by a length and a half.
English B right to his outside. Here's Jace's Solitude on the outside. Tracksmith trying to find room. It's English B who leads it. Down the outside is Jace's Solitude. English B, Jace's Solitude. These two hit the wire together. I think English B held on.
Now here's Mike Penna.
Hour 3 of the Equine Forum. Welcome back. Mike Penna, Baron of the Backstretch. Happy to have you along for the ride here this morning. The TwinSpires triple play. Vance Hanson will join me momentarily to give you 3 races you can keep an eye on. That will begin the third hour of the program. Kurt Becker, Stroll Through Racing History, that fantastic story that you won't want to miss. It's about the history of the Virginia Thoroughbred industry, and as you know, all week long here on the network, we have been celebrating Virginia Thoroughbred Week, so it's a perfect way to wrap up the week. And then at 10:30 Eastern, I Ask, They Answer with Dale Romans and Tim Wilkin, and no shortage of things to talk about with Dale and Tim in that segment at 10:30. One quick note, I meant to mention this in hour 2 after the Laffit Pincay III conversation that you just heard, and boy, some wonderful stories there. And Laffit, I asked him to talk about his first job in broadcasting, and he did a nice job. But he sent me a note separately, and he said, my first job in racing was actually working for Bobby Frankel. And he said he got a D in geometry, and his father, the Hall of Famer, Laffit Pincay Jr., told Bobby Frankel to put him to work. So he walked hots for Bobby Frankel at Del Mar in 1991 and 1992. He said marquetry was there. He also had Quest for Fame and Tussauds. He had Defensive Play and Missionary Ridge. Some of those outstanding horses, they were all there with Bobby Frankel. And Laffit went on to say, suffice to say, after that job, his math grades didn't improve very much. I love it. Boy, what a experience for a young person to get into the game than to be around all of those outstanding horses and to work with a guy like Bobby Frankel. But I guess when you grow up as the son of the legendary Laffit Pincay Jr., you're not really in awe of anything at that point. But if you missed that conversation with Laffit just a short time ago, we're going to podcast that for you individually on our website and on every podcast platform. So for those of you, all of you who follow us on your podcast platforms, you're going to be able to listen to that again and share it with your friends. It was a fantastic conversation with Laffit, and congrats to him on that Jim McKay Broadcasting Award, which he will receive in October. Okay, as I mentioned, Hour 3, loaded with all kinds of content. So many of you weighing in on the poll question on our social media pages. Who is your pick to win today's Virginia Derby at Colonial Downs? Keep those responses coming, and you can email the show with your comments as well. But now we kick it off with the TwinSpires Triple Play and my friend Vance Hanson. Vance, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. Glad to be with you again.
Yeah, excited to talk a little racing with you here. And the 3 races you selected today, 2 are from Kentucky Downs, 1 is from Colonial Downs, and all 3 are obviously grass races. And, man, they are challenging. When I went back through and looked at those 3 races, I'm thinking Vance is a better handicapper than me if he can make heads or tails out of some of these races.
Yeah, the Kentucky Downs races especially, they look so wide open on paper every single day, all 7 days of the meet, that it is kind of mind-numbing. But I'm going to roll the dice here on a couple of races at Kentucky Downs and one at Colonial, as you said. So hopefully we can come up with something good and that'll pay well.
Okay, we begin with the 2nd at Kentucky Downs. Then we'll go to the 4th race at Colonial, wrap it up with the 7th race at Kentucky Downs, which is the Grade 2 Music City Stakes. So race number 2, maiden special weight event, 3-year-old fillies going 1 mile on that turf course at Kentucky Downs. Luz Divina is the 3-1 morning line favorite. Can we beat her?
Yeah, I think so. I'm going with the filly that's actually just breaking right to her outside, and that's Mama Bell for trainer Jose D'Angelo. Mama Bella has not run since early March. Spent a lot of the winter at Gulfstream Park getting into some real trouble in some of her races. If you look at some of the comment lines in the past performances, you'll see, steadied first turn, bumped at the 5/8, bumped in the start, stymied at the rail. I mean, this filly just endured a lot of tough trips at Gulfstream last winter. Wound up finishing second in her second turf start. Beaten only a length, so that was a pretty good effort. But I think the trips that she endured in her other 2 races really cost her, a better placing. So she comes back after a long layoff here today. She's been working lights out at Paul Meadows over the last couple of months. You just see bullet work after bullet work on the tab. And she picks up Frankie Dettori today, and Frankie was just off to a spectacular start at the Kentucky Downs meet last weekend, winning with 5 of his first 18 mounts. So I think Mama Bella, if she can work out a good trip, she gets a more spacious track to work with at Kentucky Downs, and if she's ready to roll here, I think 8-1 on the morning line would be a good price for her.
Do you think a guy like Frankie Dettori maybe has a bit of an edge on a course like Kentucky Downs where it is very European style?
It's quite possible. I don't know if he actually rode at Kentucky Downs before this meet, obviously having been based in Europe throughout his career early on, but he's certainly adapted to it quite well, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this race, the 2nd race at Kentucky Downs for the 3-year-old fillies. Well, that might be offensive to number 1, Stay Lost. She's the only older lady in the race. She's a 4-year-old filly, so 3-year-olds and up, but it is mostly 3-year-olds. Stay Lost, the only 4-year-old. And Vance is going to take a shot with number 10, Mama Bella, at odds of 8-1 in that 2nd race at Kentucky Downs. All right, let's go to Colonial, Vance, for the 2nd leg of the TwinSpires Triple Play, and we will remind our listeners that they can play all 3 of these races we're talking about at TwinSpires, and they should be betting every race that we're talking about every single week over at TwinSpires. But Colonial Downs Race 4 is a 1.16 on the inner turf maiden special weight event. Number 6, Academy for Grand Motion, the 5-2 morning line favorite. Are we playing Academy or are we going against her?
I'm going to go against her, and there's a first-time starter in here that kind of stood out to me just looking at the past performances, and he's listed at 12-1 in the morning line. I really don't think you're going to get this once I get into him a little bit, but Marshall for Pin Oak Stud, trainer Mike Stidham, jockey Ben Curtis. Marshall sold for $600,000 at Keeneland September as a yearling. He's by Justify, one of the preeminent sire in the world basically right now, and he's out of a mare that is a half to Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf winner Rote. So this is an amazing pedigree. Justify 14% with first-time starters on the turf, and digging deep into his pedigree even a little bit more, Justify with a Galileo mare. Which Marshall is. I mean, this cross has produced, of course, City of Troy, who's the top race horse in Europe this year, and will be arriving on these shores for the Breeders' Cup Classic. And also, this cross has produced a nice filly named Buchu, has won a couple of graded stakes at Keeneland. So, a lot to like from a pedigree perspective from Marshall. And also, I'd also note the trainer-jockey combination of Mike Stidham and Ben Curtis have really done well at Colonial Downs the last couple of seasons, showing a flat bet profit in most categories and winning with over 30% of the time when they've hooked up together. So I think Marshall is a potentially well-meant first-time starter in this race. And like I said, I don't think you'll get necessarily 12-1 here, but something in the mid-single digits would be fine by me.
Yeah, Vance, I did it again. I not only did I offend just one horse, I may have offended the whole field because I referred to this field as a group of ladies. Academy, the 5-2 morning line favorite, is indeed a colt, just like all of the other boys that are competing in this race. He's a son of Oscar Performance. We know how good he has been, and Graham Motion can get it done anytime on the grass. He adds blinkers today. Do you give him? I know you're playing against him, but do you give him a shot to run a big race?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's actually several second-time starters in here that merits a look. Academy is definitely one of them. Coming out of a race at Saratoga where the competition is obviously a lot deeper, I mean, he should like the drop in class here. And then the colt to his inside, National Law, ran a pretty nice race at Monmouth on the dirt first time out, but he's by constitution, adds blinkers, and stretches out here, and he could also improve as well in this race.
All right, but it is number 10, Marshall, at odds of 12-1 for Vance's top pick, looking to pull off a bit of an upset in race number 4 at Colonial. Vance, let's wind it all down with race number 7 at Kentucky Downs. That is the Grade 2 Music City Stakes, 6.5 furlongs. Pounce, the 7-2 morning line favorite, and another full field. And I always say when you have a race like this, it's very much a Breeders' Cup type of betting race. You've got a 7-2 favorite in a big field. Indicates that the race is pretty much wide open.
Very much so. I'm leaning towards number 4, Pipsy, 6-1 on the morning line for trainer Will Walden. This filly began her career in Ireland where she was bred. Won 2 of 3 over there, including a maiden race against the boys at the Curragh. So that's a high quality track, and she won it very comfortably that day too. So then she was imported earlier this year. Went to Will Walden's barn, and she made her debut in the Soaring Softly Stakes at Aqueduct in May. She was a mild favorite there, 3-1, and she broke really slow in that race, and she only had one horse, and this was going 6 furlongs on the turf, and she only had one horse beaten turning for home, but boy, did she turn on the afterburners in the stretch, got off the rail, swung very wide, and put in a monster sustained rally and won pretty easily in the end. You'd have to go back and look at the replay of that, but it was a very comfortable half length that she won by over a couple of fillies that she's meeting again in this race. Now, her next start, they stretched her out to a mile at Churchill in the Tepin Stakes, and given the lack of pace there, she actually wound up on the lead herself, but then she kind of caved in the stretch, and that running style, being on the lead herself and then going a mile, I don't think that was her game necessarily. So I like the fact that she's cutting back to 6.5 furlongs. She's having run at Ireland to begin her career. I think she's going to enjoy this type of track at Kentucky Downs, and I expect a much better performance than last time.
Vance, you spend a lot of time following and handicapping international racing, and as we know, those courses are different. Kentucky Downs is a much different, and I referred to it earlier as a European-style turf course, and I believe that's accurate. When you start handicapping Kentucky Downs, do you take a little different approach than you would if you were handicapping a traditional racing surface like, let's say, Keeneland, for example?
Yeah, it's always in the back of your mind, and it's almost kind of a crapshoot, really, when you're facing a field that has never really run over a course like this. And oftentimes in certain races, I'll kind of certainly look at those that have already run well over the Kentucky Downs Strip before, and kind of give them a few extra points, I think, just for having that kind of experience. But that's what makes Kentucky Downs racing and handicapping so intriguing, is you really don't know how these horses are going to handle that kind of surface first time out. So it adds to the challenge, but also sometimes to the frustration too, when your pick may not handle the surface as well as others do.
I'm going to bring this up with Dale and Tim in the final segment of the show. I ask, they answer, but one of the things I want to ask them is, do they feel that Kentucky Downs, because of the fact that you have the full fields and the undulating surface and horses coming from all over the country and now all over the world, do they feel as if that's the most difficult track in the country for horse players to decipher? What do you think? Is it the most difficult one?
Yeah, that's hard to say, really. And I think one interesting factor that I've noticed with Kentucky Downs over the last few years is that sometimes that course tends to get really biased. Sometimes the speed will just carry quite well on certain days, especially after like a dry spell that firms the course up really good, and then other days it's a closer's paradise. So that's also another factor that kind of makes it a very tough, not only to win, I suppose, from a horseman's perspective, but definitely from a wagerer's perspective.
All right, let's recap Vance's TwinSpires Triple Play for this Saturday morning, and then Vance, I'll let you tell our listeners what's coming up with Briss and TwinSpires, some of the fun things that are going on there. But we'll start with Kentucky Downs Race 2. Vance, you'll select number 10, Mama Bella, at odds of 8-1. Colonial Downs Race 4, number 10, Marshall, at odds of 12-1. And Kentucky Downs Race 7, number 4, Pipsy, at odds of 6-1. So looking for some value in all three races in the TwinSpires Triple Play. Don't forget to play each of those races any way you like at TwinSpires. Vance, what's happening at Briss and TwinSpires this weekend?
Well, some of the offers we have at TwinSpires, we have a $10 money back promotion for your horses that want to wind up second or third. That applies to select races throughout the Kentucky Downs meet, and it applies to all eligible races at Colonial Downs today for the Virginia Derby card. So take advantage of those two things. And also, I'd note, when I was on the show previously, I mentioned that TwinSpires is getting into the tournament fields, and today there's a National Handicapping Championship and Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge qualifier on the Kentucky Downs card today, and you can check out TwinSpires for more information about that contest.
All right, there you have it. Vance Hanson with the TwinSpires Triple Play. Vance, appreciate the visit as always. Good luck with those three selections in every race you're going to bet this weekend.
Thanks, Mike. Good to talk to you. We'll see you next month.
You got it, my friend. All right, coming up next, Kurt Becker takes you on that weekly Stroll Through Racing History. Nobody tells a story like Kurt Becker, and he's got a good one for you this week, the history of the racing and breeding industries in Virginia. Helps us wrap up Virginia Thoroughbred Week here on the network. Stay tuned for that. Dale and Tim coming up at 10:30. This is the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires on HRRN.
Race to TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
This is Virginia Thoroughbred Week on HRRN.
In Virginia, horses create jobs. Just ask farrier Justin Phillips.
My grandfather started it. He started shoeing just because back then it was hard to get anyone to come do their horses regularly. So he went to farrier school just to do his own horses, and then started doing more and more and escalated from there. Now we have 5 farriers with the same last name and about 7 other ones that work with us. My grandfather at 74 is still shoeing horses. It's our livelihood. Yeah, he started a legacy.
Virginia's economy wins with horses.
Join us for the FanDuel meet at Kentucky Downs now through September 11th, showcasing 7 days of racing with $34 million in purses, including the world's richest maiden races at $170,000 for Kentucky breds. The meet boasts the largest field sizes in America with 6 $2 million stakes races on September 7th and 15 of 18 stakes worth at least $1 million for Kentucky breds. Also on September 7th is the FanDuel TV U.S. Open Turf Championships, including 2 Breeders' Cup Win and You're In races. Reserved seats on sale at theMintKentuckyDowns.com. There's Unique, and there's Kentucky Downs.
Scott Mallory is once again offering a strong group of yearlings in books 2 through 6 at the upcoming Keeneland September yearling sale. With proven sires such as Curlin, Blame, American Pharaoh, and Liam's Map, as well as hot new sires such as Yopon, Bo Liam, Tacitus, and Charlatan. The Scott Mallory consignment has something for everyone with 48 offerings, books 2 through 6 at Keeneland September. Look for future Scott Mallory consignments at Lone Star Park's TTA sale, Fasig-Tipton Timonium, and the Fasig-Tipton Kentucky October sale.
Colonial Downs summer racing season is here. Weekend racing returns with afternoon racing on Thursdays and Saturdays and a new late afternoon post of 4:30 p.m. Eastern on Fridays. Back is our popular 12% takeout pick 5, now offered twice daily. Join us for our biggest day of the season on August 10th at 1 p.m. for Colonial Downs Festival of Racing, featuring 7 stakes races, including the Grade 1 Arlington Million. And then September 7th will wrap up the season with the Virginia Derby. Colonial Downs, rich history, bright future.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
Hello, I'm Kurt Becker. Thanks for joining me as I take another stroll through racing history presented by Keeneland. Talk to a racing enthusiast from the Commonwealth of Virginia, and he or she might make the claim that Virginia is the cradle of horse racing. Think you know your horse racing history? Get ready, because the same Virginian might want to take the discussion all the way back to the 1600s. Given that this has been Virginia Thoroughbred Week on HRRN, today we look back at the history of breeding and racing in Virginia. Chet Hagan, who gave up a job as manager of the NBC newsroom in New York to operate Marywood Farm in Somerset, Virginia, wrote a weekly column in the early 1970s on horse racing for the Daily Progress in Charlottesville. And Hagan often unearthed tidbits of Virginia's early racing and breeding history. He began with the founding of Jamestown in colonial Virginia in 1607. 3 years after that, the London Company shipped 7 horses to Jamestown, and in 1620, a shipment of 20 mares arrived in Virginia. They were described as beautiful and full of courage. Hagan once wrote that every member of the King's Council, which governed Virginia, either had owned or bred racehorses in England before coming to the new land, and so they brought enthusiasm for racing with them. According to Hagan, races in 17th century Virginia were held on narrow pathways between burgeoning farms, and racing was for the aristocrats. The non-gentry were not to participate. Court cases in York County in the 1670s make reference to fines and penalties imposed on people who failed to take this directive seriously. It is contrary to law for a laborer to make a race, this being a sport only for gentlemen, proclaims the transcript from one such case. Defendants found guilty of violating the law were sometimes fined with 100 pounds of tobacco, the penalty. Others were placed in the stocks on the town square for up to an hour. Hagan also wrote that it was a clergyman who ranked as the most prominent figure in racing in colonial America. Dr. James Blair, the founder of the College of William and Mary, was, according to Hagan, determined to establish Williamsburg as the racing capital of America. Hagan further wrote that the population of Old Williamsburg would swell from 2,000 to 6,000 during race week, and that a young horse breeder named George Washington timed his visits to the area to coincide with the races. Hagen notes that in 1691, Royal Governor Francis Nicholson issued notice of a race to be held on St. George's Day, April 23rd. It has been argued that being a specifically named race with purse money to be paid to both the winner and runner-up made it the first stakes race ever held in America. Virginia was also said to have imported the first bred or blooded horse to America in 1730. Named Bull Rock, his arrival has been cited by some historians as the start of the American breeding program for racing purposes. It should be clarified that racing of that era often took place in 4-mile heats, and so it was said that to race a 2-year-old was barbaric. To race a 3-year-old was unwise. 4-year-olds were raced sparingly, while to wait until a horse was 5 years of age was considered the mark of a true sportsman. Racing and breeding in Virginia flourished in the pre-Revolutionary War era, and this included the arrival of stallions from England, such as Janus and Fear Not. The former was imported by Mordecai Booth in 1756 and became the sire of top sprinters in the fashionable Tidewater region, while the latter was imported by John Baylor in 1764. Insight into the minds of breeders of the era comes from a letter written by Baylor to his agent in England while searching for a stallion. Baylor wrote that he wanted a beautiful, strong bay with spirit and which had an accomplished racing record and pedigree at full length. He also wanted certification of age under a nobleman's name. It took 2 years to complete the search, but Fear Not proved to fit the bill. The stud fee was £8, 10 if one wanted to insure a live foal. As for Fear Not, he was a successful sire which nonetheless failed to sustain an enduring male line. It was said that because of their size, strength, and speed, his offspring were popular with Virginia patriots as mounts during the Revolutionary War, and many were lost. While promoting and preserving the history of racing and breeding in Virginia, Hagen admitted that Lexington, Kentucky had become America's breeding capital for top-level thoroughbreds, but he reminded his Kentucky friends that Lexington had actually been part of Orange County, Virginia at one time. In the last 50 years or so, names like Meadow Stud in Doswell, Rokeby Stables in Upperville, Buckland Farm in Gainesville have written their own chapters of Virginia racing and breeding history. Horses such as Secretariat, Mill Reef, and Pleasant Colony have been foaled in Virginia and have gone on to enjoy national and even global success. It's all a reminder that Virginia owns a rich history and legacy in the sport, a history some 400 years in the making. Please join me again next week when I take another stroll through racing history presented by Keeneland. For HRRN, I'm Kurt Becker.
And once again, my thanks to Kurt and to Keeneland for making those segments possible each and every week. If you have missed any of Kurt's Stroll Through Racing History segments, all you have to do is head back over to our website, horseracingradio.net. You can check out the special podcast page dedicated to those stories and listen to every single one. There have been some amazing ones. Go back and listen at horseracingradio.net. When I come back, Del Romans, Tim Wilkin, they will be here. It is this week's edition of I Ask, They Answer. This is the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires on HRRN.
This is HRRN, horse racing's voice.
Race the TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Churchill Downs 14-day September meet runs September 12th through the 29th. The September meet starts the kickoff to the road to the Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks with the $300,000 Grade 3 Iroquois and the $300,000 Grade 3 Pocahontas, Both races for 2-year-olds will be run on September 14th. The meet will also showcase many horses preparing for the Breeders' Cup in November, with 11 stakes worth more than $3.5 million in purses, which are powered by the Kentucky Thoroughbred Development Fund. You are not going to want to miss the September meet at Churchill Downs. For tickets and more information, visit churchilldowns.com.
Will you accept the Breeders' Cup Challenge? The chance to compete against the best in the world? The chance to race for a piece of a record-setting $33 million in purses and awards? The chance to be a champion? Winning a Breeders' Cup Challenge Series race gives you the chance to do just that. With an invitation to horse racing's biggest event of the year, the Breeders' Cup World Championships in Del Mar, where finish lines become the start of a legacy and starting gates shine on the world stage. Win a Breeders' Cup Challenge Series race and earn an automatic starting position in a Breeders' Cup race, entry fees paid by the Breeders' Cup, a Nominator Award of $10,000, travel awards, and so much more. Here, winning a Challenge Series race is just the beginning. View the schedule of Challenge Series races happening around the world and learn more at breederscup.com/challenge.
This is I Ask, They Answer on the Equine Forum on HRRN.
James Luck at the top of the lane, whittled down to a 3-length lead by Artie Schiller and Kitten's Joy circling on the far outside. Class Concern is fourth, Lippin is fifth. Prince Arch has plenty to do. It's Kitten's Joy and Artie Schiller's pulling away. Kitten's Joy's responding right back. Kitten's Joy on the outside. Artie Schiller, they're well clear in the Virginia Derby. Kitten's Joy and Artie Schiller's running his heart out on the inside. But Pado's got another Virginia Derby. It's Kitten's Joy, and Kitten's Joy is full of run to win by 2.5. Artie Schiller and Prince Arch was third and Lippin fourth.
Boy, was he ever full of run. 20 years ago, Kitten's Joy giving our man Dale Romans the first of his 3 Virginia Derby victories. Dave Rodman had the call. We'll look back on those races here this morning. Plus, what are the chances Dale upsets today's $2 million turf sprint with 15-1 outsider Coppola, and how will he celebrate if he does? And how else would you expect Dwayne Lucas to celebrate his 89th birthday? The ageless Hall of Fame trainer did it by saddling yet another winner at Saratoga. We'll share our thoughts on the Lucas legacy coming up here today. Those topics and much, much more straight ahead on this week's edition of I Ask, They Answer with trainer Dale Romans and turf writer Tim Wilkin, all presented by the University of Louisville, Equine Industry Program and the College of Business, and all starting just 30 seconds from right now.
A spark turns into a dream, and your dreams fuel a love that will last a lifetime. Turn your passion into a career with experienced guidance, a thorough study of equine business, as well as opportunities to get your hands dirty and put your mind to work. Located in the heart of horse country, let your passion fuel your profession at the U of L Equine Industry Program. Apply today.
All right, guys, later today we are going to see what is likely to be an historic renewal of the Virginia Derby. Quite potentially, quite possibly, the last one that we're going to see run on grass before it shifts to the main track next year to become part of the Road to the Kentucky Derby series. Dale, I mentioned those 3 victories in the open to the show. That's a special race for you. You win it with Kitten's Joy in 2004, the call that we just heard, Patio Prado in 2010, Silver Max in 2012. Let's start with Kitten's Joy. Man, that was a special win, wasn't it?
That was special. You know, he was my second Grade 1 winner. He won Secretariat a week after Roses and May had won the Whitney. But he was always a special horse to me. He was just different than anything I've ever been around. I still like to say he's my gold standard of horses that I've trained. And he was just spectacular. All you had to do was point him in the right direction. He'd go to the lead if you wanted. He'd come from way back if you wanted. It made no difference. He was just certainly special, and he took it to the breeding shed. I mean, that's where people remember him from mostly after 20 years, I guess, is what a good sire he's become. Or he was. It was a sad day when we lost him. I didn't realize it was 20 years ago. If I'd been in the military, I'd be retired right now.
Yeah. What do you remember about that day that he won that race, Dale?
I was just a big race, and it just was, you know, Artie Schiller was a horse that we were really concerned about. And Artie Schiller, in his own right, was a superstar. I believe he won a Breeders' Cup Mile, and but he ended up being a better miler than he was going any further than that. So we beat him a couple times. But going into the race, he was, we were really worried about him.
Tim, what do you remember about Kitten's Joy?
He was so consistent. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Dale, but I think he had 9 wins and 4 seconds and 14 starts. And the first time he ever raced, you could get you got 16-1 on him. That was the only time he was off the board. But just a consistent runner. You knew you were never going to get shortchanged when you took him over.
Robbie Alvarado, everybody knows my good friend, and he was one time he was walking around the shed row. Kitten's Joy was, and he said, "Leg me up on him." He took him a lap around the barn. He got off. He said, "Now I can say I've ridden him." and then in the Firecracker, the second last start of his life, Robbie had a live horse in there. He said Kitten's Joy went by him so fast he lost his focus riding and just was watching him run. He said it just was. He did that for a lot of people.
Dale, how about the other two? Patio Prado in 2010, Silver Max 2 years later.
Both superstars. Both horses I wish were standing over in barn 4 right now. The Patio Prado I bought at a yearling sale for Jerry Crawford. It's one of the very first horses I ever bought for Donegal Racing. And I don't think Jerry even had Donegal at the time. It might have, but just started Donegal. We paid $105,000 for him. I went $5,000 over budget. It was one of the better moves I've made in my career.
Timmy, what do you remember about those horses?
Well, I remember Patio Prado was, kind of pretty well established on the dirt. He was third in the, was second in the Bluegrass. Then he was third in the Derby. And then he ran in the Preakness. And then the decision was made to go to the grass, right?
Yep. And then we grass.
Even though he had run on the grass earlier.
Yeah, but we prepped him coming in. He broke his maiden mistake at Gulfstream on the grass. And, of course, back then you could get points on the turf, so I kept him on there for a little while. But it felt like he could do either or. And he probably should have been second in the Derby, but my jock lost his focus at the end. But we got nailed on the wire, but that's a whole other story I think I've told enough times. But what a superstar he was. And he was a big part of the day when Shackelford won Preakness. He had won the Dixie earlier in the day. That was his last start.
Yeah,
if he had run better in the Preakness, would he have stayed on dirt, do you think?
I think he'd eventually gotten back to the turf. But, he would have eventually got it. We kind of knew his best because his pedigree and everything was turf. He would have ended up there eventually. He might have stayed on the dirt a little bit longer. Tried some more of the 3-year-old stuff.
Yeah. Of Dale's three winners in the Virginia Derby, guys, Silver Max is the horse that made the most career starts. He had 27 starts. He earned just shy of $2 million. And Dale, that was your buddy Robbie Alvarado who was aboard for his win in the Virginia Derby that year.
He actually was, and at the time, that's a good story how we got that horse. He was owned by the, and they asked me to come over to the sale and look at him and tell him what to do. And I went over to the sale and said, "Don't sell him." And I said, "He's in the wrong sale. His pedigree's not deep enough. He's too nice a horse to run through there." And he goes, "Well, I'm going to sell him. He's going to put a $19,000 reserve on him." So, 19, I'm buying him at 20. We bought him for $20,000. So that's a pretty good return on an investment. And I had planned on keeping him myself, but I had a bunch of horses I'd bought. I had him piled Mark Bacon in and says, "I need to get a horse. Find me a horse." And so there's a pile of them. Go through and pick up. And Robbie was with him, and he had ridden his father, Badge of Silver. And he said, "Take this one." And actually, I don't think anybody knows that they didn't at the time. Robbie ended up taking a piece of the horse, so he owned part of Silver Max when he was riding him. And I think it helped him through a few of his rough times, that money that Max won. He went on to beat Wise Dan on the synthetic at Keeneland. Mm-hmm. And when Wise Dan was really doing well, it was supposed to be on the turf in the Shadwell, and I don't think they wanted to come in after it was a deluge that day, and they wanted it to come up. They were going to scratch it, but it didn't come off. They took it off, and we just went wire to wire, and he couldn't catch us. He was such a fast horse. Tammy said he had the most gears of any horse we've ever had. She always worked him. She loved Silver Max, and she said every time she smooched to him, he dropped to a new level. And it was had the most gears of any of them. really cool horse. He's over with old friends right now, just hanging out. And I need to stop in there and visit him.
Yeah. Well, fun trip down memory lane with Dale. 20 years ago, 2004, he wins the first of his 3 Virginia Derbies, and then those other 2 with Patio Prado and Silver Max. Guys, we get to look back on another legend in the game, and that is Hall of Fame trainer D. Wayne Lucas, who celebrated his 89th birthday on Monday at Saratoga, and he did it by saddling career winner number 4,933. And here is the way that moment sounded from track announcer Frank Miramati.
Here's Daily Grind with good strides right up to Military Road. They're in the final furlong, and Daily Grind has come up to be head and head with Military Road, who's fighting bravely on the rail. Elko County not done. Daily Grind, Elko County, Daily Grind, Elko County, Daily Grind. D. Wayne Lucas gets a birthday present to kick off the day. Luis Saez got him there. Elko County just missed. Behind that, Military Road, the living legend, D. Wayne Lucas strikes on his 89th birthday.
Did he ever? Timmy, should any of us be surprised by that result?
With Wayne Lucas, I'm never surprised. I mean, I spent a lot of time with him in his office this summer at Saratoga, and he was really high on his 2-year-olds. And towards the end of the meet, he was telling me how disappointed he was that they hadn't run well. I mean, Daily Grind was a 3-year-old, but broke the maiden in the 14th start. But he really thought he was going to have a bang up season with his 2-year-olds, which he didn't. And he was really disappointed in them. And but he still got that competitive edge where he expects to have a better crop of 2-year-olds next year, because he's always looking ahead to the classics. And just seeing him every morning on the pony at 5:30 in the morning, he's up to work and before a lot of people are even waking up. So he still thrives on it. He has no intention of retiring. I mean, that's just him. He's always been. He's just a horseman, and it's just. I'm at Kentucky Downs, so I wasn't there to see his win, but reports I got was that the people in the stands were singing happy birthday to him as he went down to the winner's circle, which was pretty cool. So, happy birthday to him, belated.
Nothing that Wayne does should ever surprise anybody at this point. If Wayne's breathing, he's going to be winning. And congratulations to you, Coach. That was an amazing feat at 89. It was not as big as winning the Preakness at 88, but it was a big feat. And as everybody knows, I think of Wayne Lucas like Tim thinks of Bob Baffert. He's by far the greatest man in the game, and just loved everything he does. I've told so many Lucas stories on here that I don't know if I have any I haven't told. But I know Wayne and I used to fly around together a lot. We would be in, he'd always set up the private planes, or we'd fly in Tech Sutton with the horses. And he's always been so good to me and helped me with advice and things to do. And when I ran a maiden in the Belmont one year, he was the only person that said I was doing the right thing. And because I knew the horse would go a mile and a half, and I didn't think the rest of them would. We ended up running third. And at the time, Ken Ramsey owned the sire, the mare, and the babies. And it was big for everybody. Wayne was, when I flew up that day on the Tech Sutton airplane, he said, "Don't listen to the press. Train your horse and do what you want to do." Of course, everybody knows I've lived by that ever since. But one thing I told Wayne, we were getting on a jet one time, I said, "The problem with flying with you, Wayne, is if this thing crashes, your buddy Holly at the headlines, and I'm a big bopper on the last line." usually like to fly with people who aren't as well known, just in case. So he got a kick out of that. But the greatest to ever do it.
So does that mean you don't listen to the press? You don't listen to me?
What'd you say?
I said you said you don't listen. He told you not to listen to the press, so you don't listen to me.
I didn't hear you.
You don't listen to the press, so you don't listen to me.
Come on, Timmy, catch on. Right, I don't listen to you.
I caught on. I caught that.
All right.
I got my answer.
Dale, it's funny you tell that story about flying with Wayne Lukas and Jude Feld, who many people that listen to the program know. He was a longtime co-host of mine here, still a dear friend. And Jude would always say when we started flying around to different racetracks, and you would look over and you would see Will Farish, or you would see Robbie Alvarado, you would see some of the racing dignitaries on these planes, and Jude would look at me and say, boy, if this plane goes down, the last line's going to say, and Jude Feld was also killed.
Yeah, right, exactly.
That's just the way you feel on some of those flights.
Yep.
I sent out a picture from our HRRN account, which folks can go back and see on social media. A good friend of mine in La Crosse, Wisconsin, sent me a photograph from his high school, Logan High School, and there's a picture there in his high school of the 1966 basketball squad coached by D. Wayne Lukas. It's a fantastic picture that folks should go back and see. He was one heck of a basketball coach before he became one heck of a horse trainer.
I saw that picture.
Yeah.
It looked like Hoosiers.
Yeah, it certainly did. And happy birthday, belatedly, to Wayne Lukas here on the Equine Forum, and I Asked, They Answered this morning. All right, guys, let's move on. A couple more topics to get to before we wrap up the show with your final point of the week. It is that time of the show where we say hello to another legend, our friend Nick Zito, and Dale and Tim get to tell me if the following statements are right or wrong.
Yeah, right or wrong. Am I right? What do you think? Right or wrong?
Okay, two topics for you here this morning, guys. First of all, Dale has Cogburn as part of his team victory in our showdown competition, which goes through Breeders' Cup. Cogburn runs today in the $2 million turf sprint at Kentucky Downs. If he wins, Dale adds 10 points to his total in the contest. But I say that is not going to happen because Dale is going to sabotage his team with a win by his 15-1 long shot Coppola in that race later today. Is that statement right or wrong?
What do you think? Right or wrong?
Dale, am I right?
I think you're 100% right. We're going to put it on him today. As much as I love him, everybody knows I love him not this time. His sire, we're going to put it on him today, and I'm going to sacrifice 3 points and still go to draw off on my lead with 7 points with Cogburn second.
Timmy?
Dale, I love you, but I don't think you can beat Cogburn. I think that Cogburn is on a different plateau into this spot. I saw him the other day. He looks great. I'd love to see Coppola win, but I'm not going to bet Cogburn. I might bet Coppola, but I think Cogburn's going to win, if that makes any sense at all. My heart says Coppola. My head says Cogburn.
Funny things happen at Kentucky Downs, as you've been noticing.
Oh, I know. But it's like any other race here. It's very interesting, and they're all good betting races. But
it's not just Cogburn either. You have No Balls, the horse that won the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint last year in that race. So it's a really salty field. Dale, you're kind of like Rocky Balboa stepping into the ring with Apollo Creed for the first time.
Hey, we can take a punch, and now we're going to try to give one.
Well, Rocky's already stepped into the ring with him.
Yeah, he beat me a couple of times, but it took Rocky a time or two to beat Apollo Creed, too.
I'm sure that Coppola's going to punch his way as far as he can, and I just hope I hope he's part of the equation. But Cogburn he might be breathing different air here, but I'm really looking forward to the race.
Yeah, me too. I'm a big Cogburn fan.
Yeah, well, good luck in that race later today, Dale, and all the horses you're running at Kentucky Downs over the weekend. The uniqueness of the layout at Kentucky Downs, combined with the undulating surface, the full fields, and horses coming from all over the country, make it the most difficult track in the country for horse players to handicap and decipher. Is that statement, guys, right or wrong?
What do you think? Right or wrong?
Tim?
It could be right. I did a little research on this. Surprise, right, Dale?
Right. Surprise.
I looked at the first 33 races of the meet, the first 3 days, and 16 of the first 33 races, there were no favorites in the top 3 of those races. In 6 races, there were 10 horses that won at odds of more than 10 to 1. So 10 favorites have won. So it is just a little bit under the average, the national average of favorites winning. But, they got full fields just about every race. And there's the old adage of horses either love this course or they don't. And the other day I walked the course, and, man, this is like nothing I've ever seen. Just the way that it goes up and down. And you can't really appreciate it unless you're walking it. You are going up a hill. And some horses might take a look at that and say, no, thank you. I don't want to do this. But I think it's a great handicapping challenge for horse players that play this. And if you can figure out and get the right one, you can get paid. But there's a lot of favorites that win too.
I think it's by far the most difficult track to handicap and gamble on. But I think that's what gamblers want. They want parity and they want big field, and they pick the right horse, they want to get paid, and that's you get all those things at Kentucky Downs, and it's that's why the handle's gone up so much, and it's a great place for a gambler to go try to make a score, and that's what we all want to do for gamblers.
Yep, every race at Kentucky Downs is a Breeders' Cup caliber betting race with full fields and favorites that are lukewarm morning line favorites. The exception, of course, being a horse like Cogburn today, who's a heavier favorite, but no guarantee that he's going to win that race. So they don't run it on paper, they run it on the track, and that's a tricky track at Kentucky Downs, but value to be had everywhere, every time they go to the post. All right, guys, we'll bring back Nick Zito for that segment on next week's edition of I Ask, They Answer, but one more topic before we each make our final point of the week, or you guys make your final point of the week. This one comes via email from Rick in Louisville, who has a question for Dale. Tim, you can certainly share your thoughts too, but as a spin-off from our conversation on last weekend's show about the dynamics of jockey-trainer post-race conversations, Rick wants to know, Dale, who's more difficult to deal with? Is it the jockeys or the owners?
Well, I think we've had this similar question before, and jockeys don't give me any problems anymore. They're all a bunch of kids. I mean, back when I was younger and dealing with Pat Day and Jerry Bailey and guys like that, maybe I was just a little intimidated. But today, there's just a bunch of kids to me out there riding, and if they give me any grief, I would tell them something. But so I would say, as I shouldn't say, owners are a little more difficult.
Tim?
I'm going to go the other way. I think the jockeys are a little more difficult, at least with the media. If they win, they're great. If there's a bad beat, it's like, talking to a 2-year-old. They don't want to say anything. And, every owner I've ever dealt with, I don't know if I've ever really had a problem with any owner after a beat. They're all competitors, especially the jockey. I mean, the jockeys they're out there, they're doing the job. They're very competitive, and, they get beat, and it's a very close race. A lot of them are, and again, we're talking to them, a minute after they get off their horse. And if there's no cooling off period, it's not a good thing if you're walking back to the jock's room with a jock who just got beat and he doesn't want to say anything. A lot of times I'll wait until maybe after the last race of the day, because the stakes race is so close to the end, and I'll try to talk to them then, and they're a lot better when they've been able to dissect what just happened. But right after a race, a losing jockey is no fun.
Yeah, it's kind of like interviewing the losing team in any event, but certainly after a game like the Super Bowl, for example. Nobody wants to have that kind of duty, right? Because everybody's very disappointed. They're very maybe ticked off about what happened and the reasons that they lost, especially if it was a close game. Kind of the same thing. You don't want to walk up to a jockey or a trainer that just got beat in a big race and just stick a microphone in their face. It's nice to have that little bit of a cooling off period.
Yeah, and there's no cooling off period. We've talked about that before.
Yeah.
In this one, and Dale, this happened to him too, I'm sure. You get a bad beat, and 2 seconds later, you got the media in your face. So
yeah. Sometimes that reaction is fantastic, though, right? It's very real. It's very candid.
And it's very short.
And it's very short. Yeah. some of those answers. Rick, we appreciate that question. He had some very complimentary things, guys, to say about the show after he sent that email. So, Rick, we really appreciate it. Thank you for listening. And if you have a question you want Dale and Tim to debate or answer for you, please send that to us, Mike@horseracingradio.net. They love getting your questions. I will work them into the show for you, and you can do that, too, by posting your question on our social media pages. Guys, with 2 seconds this past weekend, defending Showdown champion Dale Romans is once again on top. He took the lead from Tim 56-51. I am back in third with 44 points. Dale has Cogburn in today's turf sprint at Kentucky Downs. And I have my wild card horse, Tennessee Moon, running in the Molly Brown Stakes at Arapahoe Park tomorrow. So we'll see how those two horses fare. Guys, that time of the show where we wrap it up with the final point of the week. Tim, kick it off for us, my friend. What's your final point?
I'm sitting here at Kentucky Downs last Saturday, and someone comes up and said, there's these two people that want to meet you. And I'm thinking, like, who in the heck is that? It was Mike and Laura Maccabee from Texas. They came up there to Kentucky Downs, and they said that they were big fans of I Ask, They Answer, and they wanted to have their picture taken with me. And I was like, man, you got to be kidding me. I was stunned that they drove all the way from Texas just to meet me, but they didn't really drive all the way from Texas just to meet me. But they are big fans of the show, and, you know, couldn't have been nicer and more complimentary of the work we do, and they think Dale is okay, too.
Yeah, I don't do as much work as you. I just answer the phone and talk for half an hour. Yes, but I would like to say, you know, Saratoga just wrapped up. It was a great summer. But there's a group of guys that I want to acknowledge from the town of Saratoga that really have no connection with horse racing. I met them several years ago at a cigar shop, and we all hang out together. But they about 4 years ago, they started cooking hamburgers and hot dogs for anybody on the backside that wanted to come and have something to eat. This is their 4th year. They started out with about 50, 60 people. Now they're feeding 300 every Tuesday up there. They had 7 Tuesdays that they fed the entire backside. Anybody wanted to come. Hamburgers, hot dogs, and all the sides that go along with it, and drinks. And I just wanted to start it with Tony and Art, and I want to thank you guys and thank everybody that helps them around the town of Saratoga. And it also shows you how much the people of Saratoga love their racing.
Indeed it does.
Yep, great stuff, guys. Appreciate it. We're going to do it all over again next weekend. Tim, real quick, a spin-off of your final point. My mother won't even listen to the rest of the show. She waits until 10:30 Eastern to tune in to you guys because she loves Dale and Tim so much. Doesn't care about what I have to say the rest of the program. She waits until 10:30 to hear from you guys.
That's great.
Your biggest fan, no doubt about it. We'll do it all over again next weekend, guys. Enjoy the weekend.
You too, man.
All right, bro. See you later.
I Ask, They Answer is presented by the University of Louisville Equine Industry Program and the College of Business. I'm back with more. This is the Equine Forum on the Horse Racing Radio Network, where racing comes to talk.
Hi, Tony.
Hey, Matthew.
There's a reason why Tony Steaks and Seafood is my favorite restaurant. It's because I want to feel part of the family. Isn't that right, Tony?
That's right. There's a saying on the wall that I truly believe in. There's always room for one more at our table. We just want you to be part of our family.
And believe me, you will be. It's Tony Steaks and Seafood right across from Triangle Park. Visit them at TonySteaksandSeafood.com.
People do some pretty cool things in their 40s and 50s. Why should saving for retirement be any different? I mean, they go back to college, learn new instruments, start skateboarding. Whoa! Okay, maybe that one's not for everybody, but saving for retirement is. With aceyourretirement.org, you can get on track with your retirement savings no matter your age. Just have a 3-minute chat with Avo, the friendly digital retirement coach from AARP. You'll get personalized recommendations based on your input that are easy to understand and work with your lifestyle. It's quick, easy, and free. Plus, it's sponsored by AARP, so you know they got your back.
Woohoo! Gnarly move, Dad.
Thanks, sweetie.
So wherever you are in your retirement savings journey, head to aceyourretirement.org and start chatting with Avo today. That's aceyourretirement.org. A message from AARP and the Ad Council.
Thursday evenings, 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern, is the Brisnet.com call-in show. It's your chance to call in and let the Horse Racing Radio Nation know what's on your mind. Call us at 888-966-HRRN. That's 888-966-4776. And discuss the topics you choose in the world of thoroughbred racing. The Brisnet.com call-in show. Sirius 162, XM 207, and streaming live at horseracingradio.net. You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
Don't forget, you still have time to take advantage of the Blood Horse Labor Day sale. You can save $14 on a subscription to Blood Horse magazine or tablet. Go to bloodhorse.com/Labor Day. Hurry, the sale ends tomorrow, September 8th. Blood Horse, the thoroughbred racing and breeding industry's premier publication for more than 100 years. Fun segment with Dale and Tim. And yeah, thank you to every one of you who sends us notes, not just about that segment, but about the entire program. We receive them on a weekly basis, and we really, really appreciate your feedback and your kind words. Can't do it without you, our listeners, and without our sponsors. And my thanks to each and every one of you and every one of them for making this show possible, including our friends at TwinSpires. My thanks to all of our guests for making this show possible here this morning. It's impossible to put a show together without all of the guests that join us every week. Debbie Easter was here, the executive director of the Virginia Thoroughbred Association. Larry Collmus, the announcer, was with us in the first hour of the program. You heard from Kevin Kerstein looking ahead to the Churchill Downs meet here in September, looking back on Ellis. Laffit Pincay III for that extended visit in hour 2, and trainer Rodolphe Brisset. My thanks to Vance Hanson for the TwinSpires Triple Play, to Kurt Becker for his Stroll Through Racing History, Dale and Tim with I Ask, They Answer. If you missed any portion of the show, check out the podcast on our website and on every podcast platform. Now for my producer, Lee Delapina in our Lexington studios, Chauncey for handling all of our social media. I'm Mike Penna. Thanks for listening, and bring on the Falcons. Week 1. Here we go, Steelers. Here we go.